Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I still remember the exact hum of the fluorescent bulbs when the first call came through. It was 11:06 p.m., the rain drumming a steady, uneven rhythm against the dispatch center's windows. My headset sat heavy on my ears, its earpiece pressed against my skin until I could feel the slight imprint and hear every thud of my own pulse echoing through the foam cushion. The scanner's little green light blinked to life, and I straightened in my chair, fingers hovering over the console. We'd been running 4 open lines at once: ambulance, fire, police, and the ever-present overflow of missed dials and hang-ups. Most nights it was a blur of mundane emergencies: stalled cars, minor scuffles, the occasional domestic dispute that fizzled out once officers appeased both sides. Those calls felt routine. They made sense, but at 11:06, something in the static cut through that routine like a jagged blade. The line crackled, and a woman's voice, sharp with panic, trembling so fiercely her words, fractured in mid-sentence, tore through the white noise. "Please, please, 911, help me." I keyed the mic. "This is dispatch. What's your emergency?" Her breath came in shuddering gasps. The background noise made no sense at first. Clanging metal, a distant, persistent hum like machinery underwater. Then a soft scrape, like fingernails dragging across concrete. She swallowed hard, and I heard it, her name. "Dana, She paused, voice cracking. "It's Evelyn Martinez." My heart skipped. I hadn't spoken her name aloud in years. "Ms. Martinez, where are you calling from?" Silence. Then a breath, ragged and stifled. I don't know. I don't see a street sign. It's dark, and Her voice cut off as though something pressed the receiver against her mouth. The static bloomed, drowning her next words in a hiss. I opened her file on the secondary monitor. Evelyn Martinez, age 64, retired school librarian, living alone in a small house off Redwood Avenue. Last call logged 8 months ago for a false alarm. No recent incidents. The storm had knocked out her power earlier. She'd called in for information about warming centers. I'd sent the details and closed the call. That was it. Now her voice trembled through the line. I patched her call to Officer Reynolds, already 4 minutes away, then stayed on the line myself, inhaling the scent of ozone and stale coffee. The other dispatchers carried on around me. Brief rhythmic beeps marking new calls, muffled conversations drifting in the background. Yet I felt isolated, as if the entire room had fallen away. I focused back on Evelyn's voice. "Ma'am, can you tell me what you see?" Another crackle. Someone's outside." Her words tumbled out. "They're near the window. I can hear them breathing." The scrape grew louder, and I could swear I heard glass fiber shift. "Dana, I'm so scared." I fought to keep my tone calm. "Evelyn, I need you to stay quiet. Officer Reynolds is 2 minutes out. Do you have a flashlight?" Yes. A metallic click. A slender beam of light bobbed through the rain slashes against the window frame. "There, I see a figure. Tall, hunched. It's raining so hard I can't tell if that's water or something else." Her voice caught. "Dana, did you hear that?" A soft thump reverberated in the call. My hand hovered over the mute button. Should I warn Reynolds? Should I escalate? Protocol said wait until I had confirmed details. But protocol felt thin in that moment. Then her voice warped, dipped into static. "They're inside. Ms. Martinez?" Silence. The storm's rhythm filled the line, punctuated by a low, moaning groan that I couldn't place. A gust of wind, or a voice emerging from the walls. A second thump, louder, metal striking wood. I pressed the emergency tone and announced on the police channel, "Priority. Possible break-in at Martinez residence. Officer Reynolds, expedite." My heart pounded as I heard my own voice crack. A final, muted scream, cut off mid-syllable, then nothing but static. I held the line open, fingers poised, listening to the last scrape beneath the hiss. After 10 seconds, I clicked off the call and tried her line again. Dead air. No ring, no dial tone, just silence. We redirected Reynolds to her address. He arrived and radioed in 3 minutes later. Door unlocked, interior empty, no sign of forced entry, no sign of Miss Martinez. Lights still off. His flashlight swept the parlor floor bare, then traced the walls, paused on a single muddy footprint at the threshold, leading toward the hallway and then vanishing under the darkness. A search of the neighborhood turned up nothing. No cameras captured movement. No witnesses saw anything. Later, when the adrenaline faded, I replayed the recording over and over, searching for clues I'd missed. But the only thing that stuck in my mind was that faint groan, like a human throat bending beneath despair, and the unmistakable softness of her voice saying, "They're inside." That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that beam of flashlight stabbing through the darkness, heard the scratch of someone fingering the window frame. I reached for my phone, thumb hovering over my husband's name, but couldn't bring myself to dial. I told myself it was just a bad call, glitchy line, panic, maybe a prank. But rationality felt like a worn coat that no longer fit. By Tuesday, I was back on the graveyard shift. Same seat, same bulbs humming overhead. The storm had moved on, but the air still tasted of wet asphalt and something colder. My headset snapped back into place, and I tried to settle into the mundane rhythm of routine calls, until the scanner spat out a new distress signal at exactly 11:06 p.m. 911. What's your emergency? A man's voice this time. Young, breathless, even more panicked than Evelyn. "Oh, help me. I'm here in the hallway. They won't let me leave." I checked the caller ID, an unassigned burner phone registered to a service downtown. No address. My chest tightened. I fed the dispatcher query. "Any idea where you are?" "Signal's gone," he gasped. "It's dark. I'm against the wall. They're whispering." I glanced at Evelyn's file open on my screen, then minimized it, heart hammering. "Okay, sir, stay calm. Can you make a noise, something?" A metallic scrape. A breath, long, dragging. Then the hushed whisper, surprisingly close to the mic. "Dana?" My breath caught. I stared at the screen. The rain had stopped. The fluorescent bulbs overhead did nothing to chase away the cold. I pressed the intercom button. "Get me every available unit on possible break-in calls in Midtown and East Side. Check for missing persons." I hit record and leaned back, closing my eyes for a second, wondering if I'd ever open them again without seeing that flashlight beam, or feeling someone whisper my name in the dark. And then the line went dead. 8 seconds later, the scanner fizzled back on with another call. But I didn't answer, I just listened. The second call rattled through the lines like an echo of the first, only sharper, more insistent. The police radio squawked as I replayed the snippet. A man's voice, frantic and punctuated by ragged breaths, cut into the hum of the consoles around me. I shivered, though the dispatch room was stifling, air thick with the scent of coffee and old carpet. I pressed my palm against the desk, fingertips grazing the edge of the recording button. Every muscle in my body tensed, as if I were bracing for impact. I keyed the mic. Dispatch to anyone en route to last address. Stand by for update. Possible pattern connecting calls. Names, no fixed locations. Timestamp 11:06. Officer Lane answered, voice low and steady. Copy. We're in Midtown now. I cut to the line. Sir, can you tell me your name? A sharp inhale. It's Jason Rollins. His tone wavered like a candle flame in wind. Jason, I said, exhaling slowly. Stay with me. Where are you exactly? Dark corridor. He swallowed hard, the mic picking up the wet snap of his collar. I don't know. Walls are metal, pipes overhead, it's... He trailed off as if startled by something just behind him. My heart clutched in my chest. Can you move toward an exit? Any light source? Silence, then a faint clang. Metal on metal. Jason's voice returned, hollow. They're blocking the door. I hear voices. Voices? A chorus of soft murmurs, indecipherable but urgent, surged through the line and vanished. Then Jason's whisper barely audible. They're reciting my address. Your address? I echoed, alarm cutting through the haze. 294 Belmont. His whisper cracked into static. They know everything. I punched the dispatch pad again, overlaying Belmont on the map. No calls had ever originated from there. It was a sleepy block of townhouses that hadn't seen significant crime in years. Yet, here I was, guiding a frightened man through its phantom corridors. Jason, I'm redirecting Officer Lane to Belmont. You need to keep calm. A low, resonant hum droned in the background, like pipes vibrating under immense pressure. I glanced at my monitor. The waveform of Jason's call pulsed with erratic peaks. Then a stifled groan, and his voice, more distant. Dana, is that you again? My blood ran cold. He was hearing my name whispered by unseen lips. Jason, it's dispatch, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Help is almost there. Are you near a stairwell? He coughed, ragged. Yeah, stairs to my left, but when I move, the hum follows. Stay where you are. Focus on my voice. I watched the timer tick as the seconds stretched. Behind me, the dispatch center carried on as usual. Calls spilling across the channels, officers reporting status updates, the dull clatter of keyboards. But none of them understood. None of them knew the weight of a name whispered by shadows. Finally, I heard sirens. Muffled at first, then swelling in clarity. Jason's relief was palpable. They're here, he gasped. I think I see light. Good, I said. Stay with them. The call cut out abruptly, the line going dead. I tried to reconnect, but the dial tone hummed back at me in cruel mockery. I noted the time. 11:12 p.m., 6 minutes later than the initial call. But time was irrelevant in the darkness. Moments later, Officer Lane's voice crackled over the police channel. Belmont Townhouse, empty corridor. No sign of anyone. Just shadows and a damp smell, like moldy pipes. Guys gone. No footprints, no cameras caught movement. Only evidence. Is this humming sound they spoke of? You hearing it? I held the mic to my ear, straining to pick up even the faintest buzz leaking through the system. But there was nothing, just the steady patter of rain and static hum. I realized I was shaking. I sat back, mind racing. 2 calls, 2 disappeared people, both cells pinging towers that indicated non-existence. Both callers hearing their own names called back to them. Both locations impossible to verify, as if conjured into the system by a phantom engineer. I tried to steady my breath, pressing both hands to my temples, but the pressure in my skull only intensified, like someone twisting a dial on the inside. I surveyed the room. beige cubicles stretched around me, each desk a small fortress of ear-splitted dispatchers, blinking consoles and half-empty coffee mugs. No one met my eye. No one noticed the pall lowering over me, but I could feel them, those unseen watchers in the wires, hovering at the edge of every line. My eyes dropped to the next caller ID queue, numbers waiting to be answered, names I'd never know, emergencies I'd guide. Among them, a line blinking orange, tagged Priority Monitor. That was for the next incoming echoes. The system had flagged a pattern file, on standby, preloaded whenever a name matched a phantom call. I swallowed. It was past midnight now, and sleep was a distant memory, something I'd lose later in nightmares. I swiveled my chair, raising the handset on the orange-tagged line. Fingers trembled as I brought it to my ear. But before I could speak, the slightest static shimmered, and then came a voice so hushed, so familiar, I nearly didn't breathe. The air in the dispatch center seemed to thicken, as though the room itself had inhaled in fright at that final whisper on the line. My hand trembled on the receiver, knuckles whitening around the plastic, and for a moment I wasn't sure if I was still in the building or floating in some shadowy void between calls. Then I realized I was still sitting at my desk, headset askew, monitors flashing their usual stream of data. But everything felt somehow off-kilter, as if the world had shifted on its axis and we were all teetering on the edge. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I exhaled, letting every shard of tension slip through my lips like steam from a kettle. My fingers hovered over the hold button, but I held back. If I cut the caller off now, I'd lose whatever fragile connection we still had. And after 2 disappearances, Evelyn Martinez and Jason Rollins, there were no more half measures. I needed to know who was inside, and I needed to hear it directly from the source before they slipped away again. "Dispatch, are you there?" The voice was coated in static, a low rasp that made my heart hammer against my ribs. Tell them we're inside." The pronoun "we" sliced through the radio like a serrated blade. I lifted the microphone. Who is inside, ma'am? Identify yourself." Silence, heavy and suffocating, pressed into the headset. Then a slow, measured breath, as though the caller was calibrating a response. And then, in a voice so achingly familiar, it sent a spike of ice through my veins. "Dana, they know you're here." I recoiled slightly, the word Dana punching a shock through my mind. How could a stranger, no, not a stranger, how could someone in the void of the city's underground know my name? I glanced sideways at the cluster of dispatchers around me, huddled in their own cubicles, unaware of the electric surge rippling through my line. I pressed the mic button again, voice tight. "I'm listening. Where are you now?" A faint surge of static trembled through the speaker, punctuated by the soft drip of water, slow, deliberate, as if someone were standing in a narrow corridor, water dripping from a leaky pipe. I imagined narrow concrete walls closing in around the caller, shadows pooling in the corners like ink. "Underneath," the voice whispered, "beneath the street. We came through the tunnels. We followed the roots of the city into your veins. We're inside." My pulse thundered. Thoughts whirled. Sewer tunnels, abandoned subway shafts, utility conduits. Places I'd routed emergency crews away from because they were hazardous, structurally unsound, labyrinthine. I'd marked them off limits on the CAD system. No one should have been down there with a burner phone and the nerve to call 911. And yet, here was a voice telling me they'd made their way into the heart of the city's underbelly, and now they were here, inside the walls of my reality. "Ma'am, do you need medical assistance? Are you injured?" I kept my tone level, but inside my chest felt like it would collapse. "No," she said, voice urgent now. "We're hungry, we're thirsty, and we want you to know how it feels to be abandoned, alone, forgotten." A tremor rippled through my spine. Those words echoed something deeper, the fear of being forgotten, of slipping out of the system's protections and vanishing without a trace. Because that was what had happened to Evelyn and Jason. 2 names in my logs, 2 voices snatched away in the static, gone before their officers arrived. I'd looked at those empty houses and corridors, saw nothing but blank walls and muddy footprints, and chalked it up to protocol limitations. But now I understood the real terror. They hadn't been misdialed calls or territorial pranks. They'd been lures, primal signals sent to draw us in while something moved through the darkness beneath our streets. I thumbed the channel switch, opening a mic to every unit in the downtown precinct. "All units, this is dispatch. Be advised, suspect or suspects are believed to be operating in the subterranean infrastructure of Midtown and East Side. Tunnels, conduits, abandoned maintenance shafts. Confirm entry points. Use caution. Proceed with backup and thermal imaging if available." Static hissed back at me. I sat up straighter, sweat prickling at my hairline. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like the hunted rather than the hunter. Because someone, or something, had studied our procedures, learned our patterns and used them against us. They'd learned my name, my voice cadence. They were inside. I switched back to the hold line. "Listen to me," I said, voice firm. "If you're injured or trapped, give me any landmark, anything that can help our teams locate you." A long pause, then a whisper. "We're in the red zone, by the crossing under Elm Street. The pipes there hum a different tune, like they're crying. We're bleeding through the cracks." The red zone wasn't in any official dispatch map. It was the nickname Tech had given a sector where the city's old water mains ran parallel to the freight rail tunnels, an area we tried to avoid dispatching units into because of flooding and structural hazards. But some of the warehouses above had caved in, exposing pitch-black passages beneath the streets. No one went down there unless they had to. No one, except whatever voice held on the line, inviting us closer. "Hold on," I said, keying in grid coordinates as fast as I could. "I'm sending the rail patrol and the dive team. They'll have infrared and side-scanning sonar. Stay on the line." There was a shudder through the static, a distant rumble that I felt more than heard. Then the whispered word, broken, reverberating. "Dana, I can see your office." My scalp prickled. I glanced behind me toward the bank of monitors displaying live security feeds of the dispatch center's perimeter. Nothing. Rain-soaked streets, empty sidewalks. But that wasn't what the caller meant. They were inside the building, or at least they claimed to be. They had penetrated our defenses down below and now watched me from the darkness. I took a breath, trying to steady my voice. "Ma'am, stay with me. You're safe. We're on our way." She laughed then, soft, hollow, unbearably close. It sounded like water dripping off metal, each note sliding into the next. "Safe?" she breathed. "We've been here for years, Dana, watching, learning, waiting, and now we have your name." The line went dead. I sat frozen, the handset an icy weight in my hand. The room had gone quiet, the usual chatter suspended as every dispatcher felt the shift in the atmosphere. Then, crackling through the police channel, I heard the rail patrol's voice. "We're in the tunnels, under Elm, visual on movement, something sliding along the wall. It's not human." The thermal feed flickered on my secondary monitor, casting the dispatch center in an eerie blue glow. I watched as the rail patrol's handheld camera swept across the tunnel walls beneath Elm Street. corrugated steel arches warped by decades of water pressure, slick with condensation that pooled in rivulets at the edges. The dive team's sonar overlay traced ghostly shapes drifting just beyond their light beam, sweeping like slow blades across the murky water in the drainage culvert. Every now and then, the image fractured into static, and I caught glimpses of something slithering, a dark mass with too many joints, too many curves to belong to any known animal. I pressed the mic. "Rail Patrol, can you confirm movement? What are we seeing?" A gruff voice crackled back. "Copy, dispatch. That shape at 3 o'clock. It recoiled into the shadow when we shined the light. Not human, not animal. We're switching to infrared now. Hold tight." Infrared overlay replaced the sonar, and I saw luminescent blurs, warm spots drifting along the tunnel edge, tracing a pattern that felt unnatural, like fingers leisurely tapping against concrete. One bright dot lingered at the base of a service ladder leading up toward a grated hatch in the street above. I exhaled so hard my headset rattled. "Dispatch to dive team," I said. "Stay with that contact, attempt visual identification, but proceed with extreme caution. Keep thermal feed live." In the headset, I heard the team leader's breath catch. "We're moving in on my 6, he murmured, and the camera jerked forward, illuminating a narrow walkway beside the water. A metal grate scraped overhead, and the diver flinched. Something's just walked under that hatch. My skin crawled. I pictured that grate rattling in an abandoned building. Maybe a manhole cover left slightly ajar, some old work crew's mistake that let an unseen passenger slip inside. And whatever had slipped through was now moving toward the hatch that led directly beneath the dispatch center where I sat, guiding them through every twist of the labyrinth. I muted the channel, heart pounding, and tapped a single key on the CAD system to flash a silent alert at every nearby officer. Possible subterranean intruder. High risk. I glanced at my co-workers, faces pale, eyes flicking between their own feeds. No one met my gaze. We all felt the same surge of dread. On screen, the diver aimed a handheld spotlight up the ladder. The light climbed, exposing rusted rungs and a slick sheen of moss. Then the camera jolted as someone, or something, slammed down from above, knocking the ladder with a thud that echoed through the headset. Muddy water splashed upward. The diver cursed and fell back, camera tilting wildly. A new thermal blip appeared at the top of the ladder. Smaller, cooler than the others, but definitely alive. "Dispatch, we have movement at the hatch," the diver said, voice tense. Thermal signature distinct from the other mass, smaller, human scale. I leaned forward. "Can you zoom, light it up?" Static wheezed, then the camera steadied on a shape crouched above the hatch, silhouetted against the dim glow of streetlights. Its frame was slight, long hair plastered to the sides of a narrow face, eyes reflecting the beam like prisms. The figure's mouth opened in a silent scream or laugh. I couldn't tell which. And then, almost casually, they reached down and lifted the diver's spotlight as though it were a toy. "Dispatch, lights down," the diver hissed. "Need backup." I slammed the channel open again. "All available units, hot zone under Elm Street. Suspect sighted. I repeat, suspect sighted at tunnel entrance. Thermal and IR feed live. Move in with helmets and riot shields. Use caution, suspected human. Approach from street-level hatch only when coordinated." No sooner had I issued the order than the diver's camera feed spat static, then cut out completely. My stomach coiled as the rail patrol team's cameras flickered in response. Panicked voices crackled through their mics. "We lost visuals. Something's blocking the feed. I see legs crawling in the water toward us." Then a low, rasping laugh that resonated in my headset. So close I felt it vibrate through the bone of my jaw. "Shut it down. Pull back," the patrol officer shouted. I punched the emergency tone and broadcast to all precincts. "Abandon subterranean entry until further notice. Suspect is aggressive and mobile. We do not have containment. Repeat, do not proceed." My throat tightened as I heard the iron grate slam above, as if someone had bolted the hatch from below. Seconds later, the hatch rattled, and the entire center trembled with the echo. I saw monitors flicker. The dispatch center lights dimmed as power surged. Shouts erupted around me. Other dispatchers scrambling, clicking on secondary lines, calling supervisors. But all I could hear was that rasping whisper through my headset, writing on top of the static, "We're inside." I leaned forward, sweat beating at my temples. "Who is this? What do you want?" Silence. Then a single breath, measured and chilling. I recognized that breath. The caller had used it before. It rippled with familiarity. It was Evelyn's breath, then Jason's breath, then someone else's breath folded together like overlapping recordings. The caller voice was a collage, layered, warped, distant, but unmistakably human. "They said we could borrow your voice," the whisper said. "We're tired of watching." The monitors flickered again, and one by one the thermal feeds blinked out. The center fell into semi-darkness, save for the emergency exit lights painted in dull red. The rain outside had intensified. I could hear it drumming on the roof, as though the sky itself were echoing the city's panic. I slammed my fist on the desk, rattling a stack of printouts. My radio crackled. One of the street patrols patched in, breathless. "Dispatch, come in. Attempted breach at dispatch center perimeter. Hatch locked from below has been forced open. We have movement near the back door. Footprints heading toward the lobby." My heart lurched. They'd come up from the tunnels and found their way into the building itself. Somewhere beyond these cubicles, through corridors stained with the imprint of countless emergencies, someone was moving. Someone who knew my name. Someone who had carved their way into our defenses. I keyed the mic with shaking fingers. "Lock down the dispatch center. All non-essential personnel to secure rooms. Officers, converge on lobby and server room. Suspect or suspects are inside. I repeat, inside the building. Approach with extreme caution." A piercing alarm shrieked through the center as the automated lockdown sequence activated. Doors clicked shut and slid into place. Guards appeared at the far end of the room, weapons drawn, eyes wide behind their visors. I pressed the handset to my ear, listening for the whisper again. Then, so quietly I thought I'd imagined it, came the rustle of footsteps, soft, deliberate, walking through the dispatch center itself, following my voice. My eyes darted to the security feed for the lobby. A grainy black and white image of our entrance, now showing a solitary figure in a tattered coat standing just inside the vestibule, head bowed. They were too still to see facial features, but the coat was soaked through, water dripping onto the floor tiles in perfect puddles. I swallowed. The center held its breath. I pressed the intercom. "This is dispatch," I said, voice unusually calm, steady as the eye of a storm. "We're here. Come forward. We won't hurt you." The figure didn't move. I paused, blinking, and then I felt it again, a whisper tickling the back of my neck, as if someone had leaned in close. "Dana, thank you for inviting us in." I spun around, heart pounding, and in the narrow shadow behind my chair I saw only empty floor. But the footsteps had stopped, and now every line in the center was silent, waiting for what would come next. I shut off the intercom and dropped the handset back into its cradle, every muscle taut as the steel doors clicked shut around the lobby. The automated lockdown had sealed us inside, but now it felt more like a cage. My heart rattled against my ribs, like a loose engine, every beat threatening to crack the calm I fought to maintain in my voice. Outside the vestibule hatch, I imagined the figure in the soaked coat watching, waiting for us to make the next move. I tapped the side of my headset, pulling up the comm channel to our internal security team. "Security, to me," I called quietly, my tone measured despite the adrenaline spiking through me. "Status on the lobby intrusion?" A soft click as the channel opened. "Dispatch," said Officer Chen, his voice thin and tense. "We've got eyes through the security cam. That figure hasn't moved. They're backed into the far corner by the reception desk, just standing there. No weapon visible. We're waiting on SWAT to clear the nearest hallway. ETA 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt like a lifetime. The waiting intensified every drop of rain that hammered the building's outer walls, each concussion of sound reminding me that we were exposed on every side. I glanced around the room at my fellow dispatchers, their faces illuminated by flickering monitors, some frozen on thermal blackouts, others showing empty corridors. None of them knew exactly what I knew, that somewhere in the subway tunnels, something inhuman had stalked us, and now our fortress was compromised by something eerily human. I keyed the mic. "All stations, maintain positional awareness. Move to secure rooms if not on active detail. Do not approach the lobby hatch alone. Repeat, do not approach alone." My instructions felt hollow as the atmosphere crackled with static electricity. I leaned forward, pressing my palms flat on the desk. I felt the faint vibration of footsteps again, soft, deliberate, echoing down the dispatch center's hallway behind me. My co-workers froze, ears cocked, but none moved. They trusted the lockdown doors. I did not. I spun in my chair, expecting to see the figure from the vestibule somehow materialized in the dispatch room, but the corridor was empty. The harsh red glow of the exit signs cast long, stretched shadows across the pale linoleum floor. I forced myself to turn back to the security monitor showing the lobby. That lone figure remained motionless, head bowed, arms hanging loosely. The grate overhead creaked as though under weight. My fingers danced across the console to zoom in on their face, though I already felt certain I wouldn't see anything human. The camera's dead pixels formed a jagged mask across the figure, but I could make out a hollow indentation where the eyes should be, as though their head had been carved out of clay and left to dry in the rain. Suddenly, a staccato burst of gunfire echoed through the center, ricocheting off the walls. My stomach plunged. The SWAT team had breached the lobby door. I held my breath, waiting for a report that never came. More gunfire, faster now, then a yelp of pain, followed by silence, too absolute, too sudden. I hit the emergency tone again and barked, "SWAT, report! What's your status? Over!" Static hissed. Then one of the sharpshooters came through. "Unconfirmed multiple hits on target. Suspect is down. We're clearing the area. Stand by." My chest tightened. "Confirm unconscious or KIA." Another pause, then, "Suspect is unresponsive. No visible movement. Stand down, team. We'll extract through rear entry." I exhaled, the tension coiling out of my shoulders in one long shudder. But the relief was short-lived. On screen, the lobby camera revealed an empty floor. No body, no blood spatter, no SWAT team dragging away a suspect. Only muddy footprints led from the hatch, snaking across the tiles, and then vanished beneath the locked inner door. The figure was gone. "Dispatch to security," I whispered, voice low and tight. "Where is the body? Where did SWAT find them?" Officer Chen's reply crackled. "They're not here. The entire lobby is clear. We're canvassing the service corridors now. How did they disappear?" I felt bile rise in my throat. "Keep me posted," I said, swallowing hard. And check every possible exit. Ventilation shafts, maintenance closets, they can't have gone far. Meanwhile, on the comm, I overheard another urgent dispatch. Central Station, come in. Possible gas leak in server room. My pulse kicked up again. They'd breached the hatch, made their way into the back of the center. Now, the server room alarm blared, red warning lights flashing on the security console. I pushed away from the desk and bolted across the room, headset forgotten, slipping on the linoleum as I reached the door to the server hallway. The glass panel revealed flickering strobe lights behind, the telltale glow of a propane sensor reading in the red. A thin haze hovered in the threshold. If that gas ignited. I yanked the door open and yelled down the corridor, "Evacuate the server room. Now! Don't use your radios in there. Static could spark it." The technicians inside stumbled out, coughing, eyes watering. I grabbed the emergency gas shutoff beside the door and slammed it down, plunging the hallway into an eerie semi-darkness lit only by the emergency exit luminescence. A distant roar, like a freight train barreling through tunnels, rattled the building's foundations. The smell of ozone and gas mingled in my nostrils. For a second, I caught my reflection in the console glass. Pale face framed by damp strands of hair, eyes black with exhaustion. I realized I'd been holding my breath so long that every exhale felt like small betrayal. Then I heard it again. Low, persistent footsteps. This time echoing through the server room's ventilation grills. I placed my ear close to the vent, the hiss of the closed door between us. The footsteps were deliberate, diaphragm-like thumps, as if someone paced impatiently, waiting for a moment to strike. The floor under my feet vibrated with each step. I hit the intercom. All units, clear the server room vicinity. Possible intruder in ductwork system. Do not engage unless you have tactical approval. I keyed the mic to SWAT again, voice firm. SWAT, can your ventilation breach team handle this? Over. Seconds passed. Static hummed. Then, in a voice I could barely recognize as human. Distorted, layered, as if multiple speakers spoke in unison. It came through the line. Dana, your heart is open. Will you let us in? My skin crawled. The voice had my cadence etched into it, my midnight speak, the way I sibilated my consonants under stress. They had recorded me, layered me, learned my fears. I staggered back from the vent, gasping. Cold sweat broke out across my brow. I closed my eyes for a moment, willing the panic to recede, reminding myself of protocol, of every emergency response I ever guided. But something primal had taken root in my chest, a fear deeper than any I'd known behind the mic. When I opened my eyes, the dispatch center's ambient lights had dimmed to conserve power. The room felt cavernous, silent, except for the soft beeping of emergency panels and the distant drip of water in the vents. I realized then that every exit corridor was still sealed. The lockdown doors had engaged fully, protecting us from the outside, but they also trapped us inside. I sank into my chair, fingertips brushing the cold emergency microphone. My throat felt raw. How many calls had I taken before this one? How many voices had I sent officers after, only to watch them vanish? Evelyn Martinez, Jason Rollins, now our intruder in the tunnels, and now someone mirroring my own voice, whispering threats through the vents. I held the mic close, voice unsteady but resolute. "Dispatch to all," I said. "We have a suspect or suspects inside the ductwork and server room. SWAT is on site and breaching from the west corridor. Tactical team will sweep from there. All other units, stay clear. Stand by for my signal." I paused, letting the gravity of the moment hang for a heartbeat. The sirens of approaching backup units blended with the building's alarm system. creating an ominous symphony of warning. Then, softer and colder than anything I'd heard that night, the whisper came again through the static. "I'm already inside." My blood ran icy. I realized that no matter how many locks we engaged, how many teams we deployed, the intruders were under our skin, under the building's bones, under our voices, and every time I opened my mouth, I invited them further. I returned to my console, steeling myself for my next move, knowing that each breath, each word, could be the key to our salvation, or the lock that sealed our fate. The echo of the whispered words, "I'm already inside," still reverberated through my skull when the monitors blinked back to life, each screen flickering on scattered patches of static before resolving into grainy camera feeds. My headset felt impossibly heavy. The microphone pressed against my lips like a weight. I leaned forward, pressing both hands flat onto the cool desktop as though it might ground me against the storm raging inside the building. Security cameras along the west corridor showed uniformed officers forming a tight phalanx, riot shields raised, torches cutting through the half-light with sharp, narrow beams. I keyed the police channel. "West corridor sweep in progress. Confirm any sign of suspect." A terse reply crackled back. "Negative visual. Sensors show irregular heat signatures in duct adjacent to server room. Small, moving targets. Multiple." I recognized the tone in Officer Patel's voice. Disbelief edged with fear. I closed my eyes for a moment, drawing a steadying breath of recycled dispatch center air. The survivors, my colleagues, stood behind me, silent. Some peered at my screens, others exchanged wary glances. No one spoke. We all listened for the next whisper or footstep, expecting the building itself to breathe. I opened my eyes and tapped the intercom for internal staff. "All personnel, remain in secure rooms. Do not approach corridors without tactical escort. This is a lockdown in effect. Security and SWAT, only in common areas." Immediately, the overhead fluorescent lights dimmed, switching into emergency mode. The dispatch room filled with low, urgent murmurs as operators huddled by their consoles, preparing to reroute non-urgent calls or hold them in queue. I keyed back to the SWAT team leader. "Maintain position at stairwell 5. Proceed with caution, suspects in ductwork. Airflow is reversed, they could be above you." His voice came back clipped. "Copy. We've got gas masks on. We'll try to flush them out with non-lethal rounds. ETA 30 seconds. I switched back to the closing lobby feed. The lone figure in the soaked coat had vanished entirely, the entrance wiped clean except for those muddy footprints traced into the tile. Now the camera showed only settling raindrops sliding down the far window, the lobby beyond empty and silent. The image itself seemed to breathe with the after-image of that shape. And then my phone buzzed. An incoming line marked "Priority Phantom Pattern." My thumb hovered above the answer key, dread twisting my gut. I needed to know if there were more calls, more names, more phantoms reaching out through the wires and the walls. I pressed the button. "Dispatch," I said. A voice answered on the other end. Crystal clear, too calm over the static. "Dana, thank you for letting us in." My blood ran cold. It was the melody of that same layered whisper, the collage of Evelyn's tremble, Jason's gasp, and that terrible mocking tone that had promised they had borrowed my voice. Now it pressed against my eardrums, intimate and invasive. "Who is this?" I forced out, throat raw. Silence, and then the faintest shift, like breath drawn through a cracked vocal cord. "We're inside you." The words slithered through the line. I slammed the handset back, heart hammering. I rose from my seat so fast it scraped across the floor. The room spun for a heartbeat, then steadied. I stared at the bank of screens, each showing secure offices, corridors, the server room hallway. Somewhere behind each camera lens, suspects in the ductwork waited, listening, watching. I drew a deep breath. They had breached the lobby. They had crawled through the tunnels. They had whispered my name, imitated my voice. They had forced gas leaks. They had collapsed the thermal and sonar feeds. And now they claimed to be inside me, inside my mind, feeding on my fear. I would not let that happen. I slammed both hands down on the emergency microphone. Attention all units. Tactical sweep commencing in 90 seconds. SWAT advance through the stairwell 5 with tear gas rounds. Security to seal all air vents and close dampers. Dispatch center lockdown to remain. Any movement, engage, do not hold fire. Silence answered me for a painful instant. Then, single file, the armored units formed. Each officer heavy with gas mask and weapon. Their torches flickered as they advanced. Each step a heartbeat in the building's chest. I switched channels to hear their comms. Stairwell 5, breach in 3, 2, 1. A muffled explosion of gas canisters. A hiss of tear gas flooding the stairwell. Then echoes of spluttering voices, shouts of distress, footsteps clambering, metal grate rattling as the duct above them buckled under pressure. My pulse soared. This was it, the moment of contact. I leaned forward at my console, one finger hovering over the red emergency button that would call a full building evacuation if necessary. I forced myself to remain calm, voice steady. Over the comm channel, I heard running footsteps on metal and concrete. The SWAT lead's voice, distorted by the gas mask, snarled, "We have movement. Suspects are trying to bolt through maintenance hatch. 2 targets crawling." I keyed my mic. "Stop them. Lock maintenance hatches and bypass panels." A tense pause. Then, "Hatch sealed. Suspects trapped. We're routing gas to flush them out." I exhaled. The tear gas rounds would drive them out. But where? Into the central lobby, into the hallways outside the dispatch room. We had armed officers there, but I prayed none would mistake phantoms for threats and fire on something irretrievable. The hiss of tear gas leaked through the paper-thin walls of the stairwell, drifting through cracks and vents. I could almost smell it in the dispatch center, a faint chemical tang that made my eyes sting. My fingers flew over the console, rerouting ventilation so the gas would stay contained, then isolating the zone. Then, through the static, came a sound like a chorus of distant moans, rising through the ducts. It built into a cacophony of tortured voices, women, men, children, speaking in overlapping whispers. "Dana, Dana, Dana." My heart clenched. They'd lured us here, into a fortress of our own rules, only to show us that no lock, no seal, no lockdown could keep fear out once it rooted itself in the walls. On screen, the stairwell camera sputtered back to life, showing the tear gas swirling around a grated panel at floor level. The panel buckled. The grate rattled. Then the great shape emerged. A lithe, ragged figure, gas mask eyes glowing in the swirling mist, dragging itself through the narrow gap into the stairwell where officers brandished rifles and raised shields. A single, distorted whisper crackled through the comm. "It's so quiet. Now." And then gunfire erupted, a staccato rhythm that shook the cameras. The figure fell at the base of the stairs, collapsing in on itself like collapsed steel. Officers shouted, gasping for breath as they pulled the suspect back up the stairwell. On the lobby camera, the granite floor of the vestibule spattered with dark stains that might have been blood or oil or something else. Officers in riot gear assembled around the unconscious figure, weapons drawn, flashlights flicking over the face. It was a woman, thin, drenched, face gaunt as if she'd lived underground for months. Her gas mask hung around her neck, cracked, revealing hollow cheeks and blank eyes that glazed over the camera like mourning mirrors. Hands shaking, I keyed the monitor to zoom in. And there, scrawled in mud along her forehead, were letters I recognized in the same cursive style I sometimes used in logs. D-A-N-A. My breath caught. The woman had carved my name into her skin, and though she lay unconscious, her lips, blue and cracked, twitched, as if she still murmured beneath the flood of tear gas. I'm already inside. A tremor shot through me. I realized then that capturing one of them would not end this, only deepen the mystery. Because they had been beneath the streets, inside the ducts, inside the building, and now inside me. And even as the SWAT medics bound her wrists and dragged her into custody, I knew the hunt was far from over. They were in every wire, every pipe, every whisper of static. The dispatch center held its breath as SWAT reported suspect in custody, and the corridors fell silent once more. But I no longer believed we were safe, because somewhere below, others still moved in the darkness, speaking my name, learning my voice, waiting for their next invitation. I took off my headset and sat back, my hands trembling over the console. The walls felt thinner now, as though alive. I closed my eyes, picturing the tunnels beneath Elm Street and the red zone water mains. I could hear the drip of water, the distant hum of freight trains above, the faint tearing of metal as someone slipped through a hatch I couldn't find. And then I understood. They weren't just inside the building. They were inside us all. Inside the very system we relied on to protect the living from the dead. And as the whisper replayed in my mind, so quietly it felt like a breath against my ear, I knew I would never hear the scanner light blink, never feel the static kiss the line, without remembering that somewhere, in the dark, they waited for me to call their name again. The moment the medical team wheeled her away, the dispatch center felt hollow, like a theater after the final act. My hands hovered over the console, sweat cooling on my skin as I stared at the screen showing her name scrawled in mud. D-A-N-O. I forced myself to exhale, fingers trembling as I toggled the camera feeds back to the stairwell and the tunnels beneath Elm Street. The images were empty now, just corridors slick with water and smeared with those same muddy footprints. I keyed my headset. Dispatch to SWAT command. Confirm suspect custody and transport procedure. Static at first, then the team leader's measured voice. Affirmative. Suspect secured in custody vehicle en route to Central Precinct. No further movement detected in stairwell. We're beginning a secondary sweep of the tunnels for additional intruders or hazards. Copy that, I said, but my voice felt distant even to me. I lowered the headset and pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting the ache that bloomed behind my eyes. 2 lives vanished without a trace. Now, a third figure in custody, and still, more questions than answers. How many of them were down there? How many voices had whispered through those pipelines? And why had they carved my name into her skin? I forced myself to sit up straight and opened the CAD logs. I ran a query on all missing person reports tagged with possible subterranean origin over the last 5 years. The system returned 3 unresolved cases, one from 2018, another from 2020, and a third from early 2023. Each victim last known to have called for help, voices cutting through static, at precisely 11:06 p.m., but none of those calls had produced footprints, or footprints had been dismissed as prank. Those cases had gone cold. My stomach clenched. The pattern wasn't new. It had just been overlooked. and I was the one who'd closed those files, stamped them insufficient evidence. I had sent out officers, insisted it was prank noise. How many times had I heard, probably kids messing with wires, and filed them away? I felt a sickness in my gut, a raw regret that made my vision narrow. One of the newer dispatchers, Robin, leaned around my cubicle. "Dana, everything okay?" I met her eyes for the first time that night. "We have to review old cases," I said. "All missing person calls at 11:06 p.m., calls reporting someone inside, calls from untraceable locations. I want every line audited, no cut corners." Her brow knit. "That's a huge job." "It's a necessary one," I replied, softer than intended. "They used our silence as a shield. We can't let that happen again." As Robin scurried off, I opened the oldest case file. June 14, 2018. A caller named Mark Benson, age 42, reporting breathing in his basement. Then static, then nothing. He'd vanished. No body, no footprint, no clue. I played the audio, the same stuttered panic, the scrape of something against concrete, then Benson's voice, achingly human, murmuring, "They're under the floorboards," before the line went dead. I felt a tremor as the realization settled over me. While I'd been dutifully routing ambulances and canceling burglar alarms, someone, or something, had been practicing, refining its lullabies in the static, learning how to blend into the night. And all the while I'd been the choir director. My headset buzzed. I pressed it to my ear. "Dispatch." A voice came through so distorted I barely recognized it as human at first. Low, rumbling, as if passing through layers of water and metal. "Thank you," it said, the word stretching into a droning hum. "Your voice, your code, it guides us home." "Who is this?" I shouted, alarm igniting behind my ribs. "What do you want from us?" Silence for a moment, then the faint echo of dripping water, multiple taps in quick succession. My eyes flew to the tunnel camera, black, silent, lifeless. I pressed the intercom button. "All units, continue secondary sweep but maintain radio discipline. Excess noise could lead to misfires. Thermal teams remap the tunnel grids. We have unknown number of suspects." No sooner had I issued the command than the line crackled again. This time, it wasn't a voice but a chorus of cries, pleading, desperate, overlapping so fiercely I had to mute the call to stop the ringing in my ears. "Dana, Dana, help us." I sat back, heart pounding. The cries faded into a single, rasping whisper. "Find us, before it's too late." I realized then that these weren't aggressors seeking to terrorize us, they were victims, or at least voices trapped somewhere in the labyrinthine belly of the city, calling out through broken lines, begging to be heard. And in our haste to protect ourselves, we'd ignored the cries. I tugged at the headset, eyes scanning the monitors. The stairwell camera still showed the corridor clear, but behind that wall lay a network of tunnels, some sealed, some forgotten. Water mains singing in their pipes, abandoned conduits carrying cables overhead. Somewhere in those damp caverns were phone lines picking up stray transmissions, distorted pleas for help that I'd misread as threats. I stood, the chair rolling back. "Security," I called, voice tight. "Unlock containment grids on all sealed maintenance tunnels. We need access. Now." My order sent a ripple of shock through the dispatch room. 100 trained professionals paused, fingers over consoles. Then the system toggled, doors clanged open. The filtered hum of vented airflow shifted as fresh air streamed in. Emergency lighting in the tunnels changed from red to amber, an invitation to descend. My pulse roared. I didn't know what we would find, what horrors, nor did I care. If those voices were alive, If Mark Benson and Evelyn and Jason and the rest were breathing somewhere beneath our feet, we owed them more than protocols and tear gas. We owed them rescue. I grabbed my flashlight and unstrapped my sidearm out of habit, more for comfort than defense. Behind me, my team clustered at the tunnel head entrance in the secure stairwell. They looked at me, waiting, faces drawn, exhaustion and determination warring in their eyes. I swallowed, knuckles white on the flashlight's grip. I keyed the comm. "This is dispatch. We're moving underground. Thermal teams follow my lead. Keep comms clear. And if you hear their voices, speak back. Tell them I'm here. Tell them they're not alone." The emergency lights illuminated the cracked concrete stairs leading down. The first step was slick with condensation. I placed my foot carefully, then the next. Each descent echoed with the muted drip of water somewhere far below. The stairwell air was dank, the taste of rust and stale humidity clinging to my tongue as I led the flashlit column of officers into the subterranean gloom. The amber emergency lights cast long, jittering shadows that danced across the cracked concrete walls, each flicker hinting at hidden recesses and unseen eyes. My flashlight's beam carved a narrow tunnel of clarity through the murk. Barely enough to see the next footstep, let alone the maze of pipes and conduits branching off into darkness. I glanced back at the team. 2 thermal specialists in tow, their infrared scopes trained on every nook and ledge. A pair of medics ready with stretchers, and Officer Chen, who'd volunteered to map our comms so that dispatch could guide reinforcements if we got lost. Their faces were ashen, eyes wide in the half-light, but their hands gripped their equipment with steady resolve. We moved in single file, boots slapping wet concrete, echoes bouncing off unseen walls. "Dispatch," I murmured into the mic clipped at my collar. "Confirm tunnel head. This is Stairwell 5, Sector C, Elm Street grid, proceeding to follow footprints." "Over." A calm voice replied. "Copy that, Stairwell 5. Footprints appear to branch northward and eastward at 20 meters. Your thermal team reports 3 heat signatures ahead, 2 faint, 1 moderate. Over." I nodded, even though no one could see me. "Advancing," I said aloud, then signaled to the thermal lead. He swept his scope in a slow arc, then paused, finger on the screen. 2 faint signatures ahead by the old pipe junction, 1 stronger near a maintenance grate by the downstream channel. Could be survivors clustered there. My pulse kicked in my throat. "All units move quietly. Keep lights low. We don't know what condition they're in." I swallowed hard and pressed forward. At 20 meters, the tunnel veered sharply right, the floor flooded with shallow water that rippled over unseen obstacles. My flashlight revealed bulges of plastic sheeting and rusting rebar jutting from the walls. The ductwork overhead dripped constantly, a relentless percussion. And there, in the shallow pool beneath a collapsed section of ceiling, I saw footprints. Elongated, misshapen by water and time, but unmistakable. They headed toward a narrow grate set into the floor, its edges encrusted with moss and grime. I knelt, fingertips brushing the wet concrete beside the grate. The footprints gave way to smeared patterns. Someone had knelt or crawled here. I glanced at my team. The thermal scopes glowed in the dim, marking the faint heat of bodies beyond the grate, likely clustered where the temperature was marginally warmer. I rested a hand on the grate. It was heavy, corroded, but not immovable. I turned to Officer Chen. "Can you get this open?" He nodded, hefting a crowbar from his belt. With 2 sharp wedges and a final heave, the metal grate shifted. I anchored my boot to the frame as he pried. Rust flaked onto his gloves. Water splashed across his boots. At last, it gave with a wrenching scream of metal, pivoting upward to reveal a narrow cavity just large enough for a person to squeeze through. Beyond, a square chamber flickered with thermal spots, our targets. I crouched at the edge, flashlight trained on the cavern. Into the beam crawled the first figure, a man, his clothes ragged, eyes sunken but alive, arms outstretched as though to embrace anything solid. Behind him, a woman with long hair plastered to her face. Evelyn's voice, or at least reminiscent in its cracked croak. "Dana." My heart thundered. I leaned forward. "I'm here. We're getting you out." My words felt absurdly inadequate. The second figure eased into view, a younger man, shirt stained brown, eyes wide with disbelief. His gaze flicked over the officers, then locked on me. "You came back," he whispered. "We thought no one would." The third shape moved last. A small form, curled against the far wall, rocking gently. The thermal scope revealed a fourth, more substantial heat signature farther along, deeper into the darkness. But this child-sized shape was pale, gaunt. I felt bile rise and forced it down. "Move back," I said to my team, raising a gloved hand. "We need space." Chen and the medics stepped aside as I crouched closer to the three survivors. The ground beneath them sloped downward into deeper water, maybe knee-deep. I squinted, peering past the water's surface. "How many more of you are down here?" I called softly. The man spoke, voice echoing against concrete. 4, 5, maybe 6. We lost one in 2020. No one found her." My throat tightened. "What happened? Why are you here?" The woman shivered, though the air was lukewarm here. She reached out, hand trembling. "We were trapped when the warehouse above caved in. We called for help, over and over. But lines were dead. Your scanners heard us, but no one came. The tunnels flooded. We lost track of time." The younger man added, "We tried to move deeper toward the east shaft, but it collapsed. We couldn't get back. We were dying." I exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of my nose. "You're alive now. We'll get you out." But even as I spoke, a tremor seized the chamber. The distant rumble grew into a full-bodied quake that shook the grate's frame against my knee. Water sloshed violently, sending ripples through the shallow pool. The lights overhead flickered. Looked up, saw a pipeline overhead begin to sag under pressure, dripping black water that hissed as it hit the tunnel floor. Something large shifted in the deeper darkness. A sixth thermal signature, bold and hot, advancing through the water toward us. I snapped to my radio. "Dispatch to all units. Structural instability detected in Sector C. Evacuate survivors out the grate. Quick. Tactical team, secure your positions. We have new movement. Sixth target moving toward us." The squad behind me flipped into action. The medics formed a human chain, lifting the woman onto a stretcher. The younger man clambered backward, coughing. I reached for the arm of the man who first emerged. "You with me, we go together." He took my arm, surprising strength in his grip. Officers shielded the grate with riot shields, aiming lights back into the dark as I dragged him upward. My boot slipped on the wet frame, but I caught balance, hauling him up just as the structural tremor intensified. Behind us, a deafening crack rent the tunnel as the overhead pipeline ruptured, sending a geyser of black, oily water cascading down. I slammed the grate shut and latched the cover, sealing the torrent above us into a sealed chamber, buying us precious seconds. The water roared behind the metal, then subsided, leaving pitted echoes in the concrete. But the quake had unsettled the ground. Dust fell from ceiling seams, and the grate's latch bent under pressure. I turned to the team. "Step back. The structure's failing. This entire shaft is compromised. We need to retreat to the stairwell now." We raced back the way we came, carrying stretchers and supporting the injured survivors. The cracked walls groaned, The dripping pipeline above us sputtered, and each step echoed with the weight of crumbling concrete. I felt the tunnel behind us collapse in low rumbles, then the roar of water surging down the broken main. An unstoppable flood gaining on us. Behind the team, the final survivor, sixth, unseen, crept through the darkness, a solitary heat signature retreating away from the main chamber. Their gait was slow, deliberate, suffering. I felt dread tighten in my chest. We couldn't abandon them, not after all this. I bit back words. Protocol demanded retreat. Humanity demanded rescue. We reached the stairwell as another quake coursed through the building. The corridor lights flickered and went dark, leaving only emergency exit signs. The team piled onto the steps, each carrying a survivor or leaning on another. My radio crackled. Dispatch. Structural collapse in the tunnels. You must evacuate immediately. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, adrenaline and fear, and something like sorrow swirling. Copy, I managed. Evacuating now. I turned to the thermal specialist. Can you pick up the last signature? We need to know if they can make it out. He trained his scope at the open grate behind us. No signature. The feed was blank, just a smear of noise. My heart sank. The sixth survivor had vanished into the collapsing tunnels, swallowed by darkness. I shook my head, swallowing the lump in my throat. They're gone, I whispered. We have to go. Up the stairs we climbed, 8 of us. 2 medics, 2 survivors on stretchers, 2 officers guiding, 1 thermal specialist, and me. Above, the dispatch center's fluorescent lights flickered on, and the jolt of returning power felt like a slap. We stumbled out of the stairwell into the lobby, ambulances wailing outside, SWAT teams clustered with riot shields, and my fellow dispatchers rushing forward in concern. I turned to the survivors as medics took over. The woman, Evelyn, caught my eye. Her face was pale, exhaustion etched into every line, but she managed a faint nod of gratitude. The younger man clasped my hand briefly. "Thank you," he rasped. "You didn't forget us." I watched them load into stretchers. Then I slipped past the medics, and for a moment the bustling scene around me felt muted, like I wasn't entirely in it. I moved toward the dispatch console, drawn as though on invisible rails. My headset lay there, abandoned. I picked it up gingerly, voice quivering as I keyed it. "Dispatch, this is Dana. The rescue is complete. 3 survivors recovered. 1 missing, possibly evacuated deeper by collapse. All units, hold position. No further tunnel entry until structural clearance. Over." Silence crackled through the headset. Then the calm voice of my supervisor. "Excellent work, Dana. You and your team saved lives tonight." I swallowed, the weight of the unseen 6th survivor pressing on me. "Thank you," I said, voice hollow. "But someone's still down there, and they called my name." The line was silent. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. In the aftermath, the only sound was the drip of water from the lobby ceiling. Each drop a reminder that beneath us, the tunnels still whispered, still lived. I set the headset down and turned to face the emergency monitors. The thermal scans showed empty. Tunnels. The grate that led to Eden's labyrinth was sealed once more. But I knew what the recordings told me. There were voices yet unheard, names yet unspoken, beckoning through the static and the cracks in our city's bones. I raised my voice to the room. "All right, let's wrap this up. Debrief in 10, and someone get me a coffee." The dispatch center sprang back to life, radios buzzing, officers debriefing, file logs updating. But I stood at the console, heart still hammering, mind echoing with that final ghostly whisper, "Find us, before it's too late." The dispatch center's frantic bustle seemed to recede around me as I stood at the console, replaying the calls, the thermal feeds, and the terrified voices we'd rescued. My mind spun with the realization that one of them, whomever they were, remained trapped somewhere in the bowels of the city. I felt the weight of that unknown survival pressing into my chest like a stone. Above me, the fluorescent lights hummed, but their steady glow no longer felt comforting. It felt clinical, like a spotlight on everything we'd overlooked. I took a shaky breath and keyed my headset again. Dispatch to all units, maintain secure perimeter at tunnel access points. No re-entry until structural engineers confirm stability. For now, shift focus to communications review. Any stray signals in those tunnels? Any dropped calls? Anything that could indicate their location. Over. A ripple of acknowledgement sounded in my earpiece as teams resumed perimeter sweeps. The lobby doors closed behind me with a final click, shutting out the clamoring outside and leaving me alone at my station. I stared at the wall of monitors, hallway cams, lobby views, and the sealed grate entrance. All silent. All still. Yet in my mind, I could still hear the soft murmur of unseen voices calling my name, the metallic echo of those muddy footprints as they led deeper and deeper into darkness. I leaned back in my chair, fingertips brushing the keyboard as I pulled up the audio logs from the earlier phantom pattern calls. Those untraceable numbers, the burner phones that pinged non-existent towers. I let them play on loop, isolating the final seconds before cutouts, running spectral analyses to filter out noise and static, amplify any faint human tone. With each pass, I picked up a new syllable, a new breath, a new fragment of a word, like a fragment of a story hidden in the white noise. Then I heard it, a soft intake of breath, like someone bracing themselves, fainter than a whisper and buried beneath layers of hiss. I looped it again and again, until I could discern a vowel, then a consonant, and there, a place name, Harper's Junction. It had been mentioned nowhere in our maps. I cross-referenced the city grid. No Harper's Junction existed above ground, but beneath the city, old transit plans and utility maps showed a disused service node under the river embankment, codenamed Harris Junction during construction, but long forgotten and misspelled in the archives as Harper's. It connected 3 separate shaft lines, one from Elm Street, one from the old subway hub, and one from the river's pumping station. My pulse surged. The survivors had told me about their flooded chamber near the downstream channel. This must be the same node. The 6th person, I had glimpsed their thermal signature retreating deeper, must have slipped through Harper's Junction to another tunnel. If I could get teams in there safely, we might find them. I tapped the headset. Dispatch to engineering control. Deploy mobile structural scanner to Harper's Junction coordinates. Run a non-invasive integrity scan from the nearest safe shaft. Relay results ASAP. My voice was steadier than I felt. A crackle of acknowledgement. Then silence. I closed my eyes against the monitor's glare, picturing the survivors' faces. The gaunt woman, the younger man, the first rescued, and the childlike shape I never fully saw. And the still unknown 6th, a person who had called for help, but whose body and voice might yet be alive, hidden in that submerged junction. I stood and stretched, reminding myself that despite the fatigue gnawing at my bones, I was the one who could organize the rescue. I took off my headset, set it next to the console, and walked to the small break room at the far end of the center. The mini fridge hummed. I grabbed a bottle of water and twisted off the cap, gulping it down as cold relief flooded my system. My legs trembled as I leaned back against the counter. In the reflection of the stainless steel door, I saw the same pale, haggard face I'd glimpsed beneath the grotto lights hours ago. I hardly recognized myself. The dispatcher who routed ambulances and stopped house fires felt like someone else. The past me, before the echoing calls and the names carved in mud. I closed my eyes, letting the water bead on my lips, tasting iron. My phone buzzed with an alert from engineering control. Preliminary scan complete. Harper's. Junction structural integrity at 70%. Safe passage for 4 to 6 personnel only. Water level stable but murky. Thermal anomaly detected near southern relay conduit. Possible life form signature. Coordinates sent. I exhaled so hard it rattled my chest. The coordinate readout placed the anomaly squarely in the area where footprints had led off beneath the water. I pocketed the phone and drained the bottle. Back at my console, I keyed the comm. Medical and tactical teams, prepare for rescue op at Harper's Junction. Thermal and sonar support mandatory. Limit team size to 6. I'll be leading. Dispatch to all other units. Hold positions and monitor communications. Over. I slipped the headset back on. The monitors showed a fresh panel sliding open on the west corridor wall. Engineers prying it aside to insert scanning probes. Lines of code scrolled on a specialist's laptop as the sonar maps updated. I adjusted the display to overlay the coordinate grid, tracing a path from the nearest stairwell down the Elm Street shaft, then through the flooded junction to the southern conduit. Every marker on that grid was a potential hazard. Collapsed ceilings, rushing currents, electrical lines submerged, unstable walls. A single misstep could crush a team, drown them, or trap them for good. I swallowed, steadying my voice. Dispatch to Harper's Junction team. Proceed with caution. Maintain calm silence until you have a visual on the target. No fire. Preserve their hearing and senses. Remember, they're survivors, not threats. A single shot could kill them, understood? No loud-outs, came the firm reply. The corridor doors swished open. The tactical medics filed in. Heavy packs on backs, rifles replaced by flashlights and suction stretchers. I drew a deep breath, feeling the familiar imprint of adrenaline. Despite the exhaustion, despite the dread, this was what I was born to do. Guide a rescue through static, darkness, and terror. I followed them, back through the dispatch center past the locked-down perimeter. The silence outside contrasted sharply with the storm of equipment clattering. We reached the stairwell, where the partial hatch to the river embankment tunnel lay open, its metal frame surrounded by puddles and oil sheen. The air smelled of sulfur and mildew. I paused at the edge, flashlight beam slicing through the wet darkness. Far below, the amber glow of emergency lights guided the descent. I checked my gear, radio at full volume, sonar handset in one hand, thermal scope in the other. I looked back at my team, 4 tactical medics, 2 thermal specialists, and me. Their faces were resolute, eyes focused. I keyed my mic softly. On my count, 3, 2, 1. Move. One by one, we stepped onto the narrow ledge, then down the slick rungs of the ladder, each footfall echoing in the water-filled shaft. The air closed in, musty and thick. Behind me, the hatch sealed with a final click, the airlock cutting us off from the center's stale safety. At the bottom, mud and water sloshed around my ankles. We formed a tight line, thermal scopes sweeping the flooded floor. Through the water's dark mirror, I saw a faint glow, sonar mapping ahead, illuminating the junction's outline in pale grids. I whispered, "There, southern conduit. Move in." The team advanced, careful steps placing feet on submerged metal plates. The water rose to mid-thigh. Above us, pipes dripped incessantly. Our sonar revealed debris pockets. rubble from the partial collapse, and one clear channel where a larger mass hovered near the submerged grate. I shone my light at the grate. Bent bars and tangled rebar pressed into the frame from the outside. Behind it, shapes shifted, human shapes. I keyed the comm. We have visuals on survivors. Prepare extraction path. The thermal specialist knelt and tapped the sonar handset. 2 adults and 1 child-size heat signature behind that grate, and a 4th signal moving deeper into the tunnel. Their shape is blurred, likely moving against the wall. That must be the 6th, the one I feared we'd never find, the one whose face I'd never seen, the one who had whispered, "Find us," before it's too late. I knelt beside the grate, water swirling around my knees. I shone the flashlight through the bars. A pair of tired eyes met mine, wide with disbelief. The child's hand wrapped around a torn rag. Behind, 2 adults, faces gaunt, bodies shivering, pressed close together. I pressed my palm against the bars. "We're here. We have you. Hold on." The child's lips parted, and in a voice hoarse as gravel, breathed, "Did you forget me?" My throat tightened. All I could do was nod, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I could never forget you. We're getting you out." Rising, I signaled the team. They set to work cutting the warp of twisted rebar, slipping it aside with waterproof shears. The survivors watched, eyes reflecting our lights. Behind them, farther into the darkness, the 4th figure lingered, silent, watching our progress. Suddenly, a tremor rippled through the grate, rattling the bars. My heart lurched. The survivors gasped, pressing against the bars as if bracing for something. The water around us sloshed violently. I spun, flashlight beam arcing toward the deeper tunnel. Through the gloom, I saw it, the silhouette of the 4th figure, stepping into the sonar glow, head bowed, arms slack. Not running. Watching us dissolving into the murk, and then its heat signature vanished altogether. I froze, breath hitching. The medics behind me tensed. The grate repair stalled as the team realized our time was running out. The water was shifting too drastically, the unstable shaft groaning overhead. I pressed my palm against the cool metal. "Finish extraction, now. We'll have to leave the last one for a secondary team. We can't risk collapse." They nodded, redoubling their efforts. One by one, the adults were lifted through the grate's opening. A gaunt man, then the woman, then the child. Each passed up into safety. As the child's hand left the bars, I saw, just behind us, the murky water swirl again, as though something had just slipped back into shadow. The final pair of hands slipped through the narrowing gap, and I braced myself. The medics pulled them through, then slammed the grate closed behind the last rescued. 3 adults and a child, now safe on the ladder above. We scrambled upward, each step an agony against the trembling ladder. The hatch above swung open, and blinding yellow floodlights spilled in. I stumbled out, coughing, as arms reached down to drag the survivors up the rungs. The water dripped off them as they emerged into the corridor. I collapsed to my knees in the hallway, floodlight beating down, helmets polished under emergency lamps. The survivors huddled behind paramedics, wrapped in blankets, murmuring thanks. But my eyes searched the grate behind me, the path we'd taken now sealed once more. Still no sign of the 6th figure, no final face, only the cold metal grate and the echo of a whisper. "Thank you, Dana, but it's not over." I rose unsteadily and keyed my mic. "Dispatch, rescue complete." 4 survivors retrieved, no further movement detected. We still have 1 unaccounted for in Harper's Junction. Recommend EOD team expand search with sonar drones once structural clearance is granted. Over. Silence crackled. Then my supervisor's voice. "Outstanding work. Get some rest. We'll follow up." I replaced the headset and closed my eyes, the adrenaline draining out of me. Around me, medics wheeled stretchers. Colleagues rushed to update logs, and emergency teams headed back up the stairwell to debrief. But I stayed for a moment in the harsh yellow light, listening for any sound from the sealed grate, listening for the faint tremor of water, the whisper of static, the hint of a name. And though I heard nothing, I knew it was only a matter of time before the city's bones spoke again. Because something remained lost in the darkness, something that had carved my name into clay and whispered through the pipes. The hush in the corridor lingered long after the rescue teams had departed. The stretcher wheels rattled down the hallway, and the paramedics' voices faded into the stairwell's echo. The survivors, those 4 who had emerged from the flooded junction, were now en route to the field hospital, where trauma teams awaited them. The medics had assured me they were stable, mostly dehydrated, suffering from hypothermia, but alive. It was the best possible outcome we could have hoped for in a labyrinth of collapsed pipes and submerged concrete. Yet none of it felt like closure. As the last team members filed back into the dispatch center, their sodden gear dripping into protective tubs, I lingered in the dim glow of the hallway lights. Behind me, Harper's Junction's sealed grate stood like a tombstone. Its metal bars bent slightly, still bearing the imprint of desperate hands. I placed my palm against the cool frame one last time, feeling the faint vibration of water far below, still moving through the pipes, still echoing through the city's veins. My radio crackled, snapping me back. "Dispatch, this is Ryder from Engineering Control. We've completed the preliminary structural scans of the junction and surrounding shafts. Coverage shows secondary conduits intact, but the main artery collapsed. Water flow patterns indicate pockets of air, possible voids behind the embankment wall. We can deploy remote drones for visual inspection, but only if you authorize." I pressed the side button. Authorize, but ensure the thermal and sonar mapping remains in tandem, no blind spots. Any anomalies, even small ones, must be flagged. I want a full 3D reconstruction before we consider sending more people in. Over. Ryder's calm acknowledgement came through. "Understood, dispatch. Preparing drone deployment." I exhaled, tension easing for the first time since the call started. My legs felt weak, heavy with fatigue. I rubbed my eyes and glanced around the hallway, the open stairwell behind me, the clustered debris tubs loaded with wet boots and raincoats, the flickering emergency lights overhead. The dispatch center's doors loomed ahead, promising warmth, coffee, and perhaps a chance to sit. I turned on my heel, heading back inside. The familiar hum of the building's life support greeted me, the low thrum of backup generators, the periodic beep of unmanned consoles, the quiet murmur of dispatchers transferring calls. It was the room where I had spent decades, and yet tonight it had become the threshold between life and some other realm. I made my way to my console. Robin, the newer dispatcher who had helped me audit those old missing person files, was already there, poring over data on her screen. "Dana," she said quietly, looking up. "Engineering says the drones are almost ready. They'll be in position in about 20 minutes. You up for one more?" I offered a half smile. "As long as it doesn't involve me kneeling in chest-deep water." She chuckled softly, then gestured to my screen. I flipped through the logs we had compiled. Calls at 11:06 p.m., each from a burner phone or untraceable line, each interrupted by static and a final whispered plea. 3 names from unresolved cases: Mark Benson, 2018, Carla Ruiz, 2020, Preston Lee, 2023, alongside Evelyn Martinez and Jason Rollins from this month, and a handful of others whose files I had bookmarked. Gina Cole, 2019, and Darius Hart, 2021. 7 missing people before the 4 we had rescued, each voice bleeding through the shadows for someone to listen. Robin pointed at the timeline chart we had generated. Look here. Each call clusters around storm fronts. Heavy rain, flooding events, yet they're always localized to disused utility shafts or abandoned transit tunnels. It's like they only appear when the city's veins are full, and the voices, they always break through the static at the same frequency band. Almost as if they learned to tune into the city's white noise. I leaned in, tracing the waveform patterns. So they adapted. They learned our emergency frequencies and latched on, I murmured. They turned our own system against us. Robin nodded. But notice this spike, she said, highlighting a section just before Benson's call in 2018 and again before Martinez's call this month. A faint, almost undetectable harmonic beneath the usual ambient noise. It's not a human voice, it's more like a resonance, something mechanical or geological. I frowned, studying the data. Could be water flow resonance in the pipes under stress, but in the audio logs, in our recordings, I thought that was static. Are you saying it was intentional? She shrugged. Maybe it's the system's fault, feedback loops, or maybe they figured it out too. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion and adrenaline tangling together. Either way, I want it isolated. See if we can filter it out, maybe even trace it back, like a beacon. She tapped at her keyboard. On it. Meanwhile, the structural drones are almost in position. You'll need to authorize deployment through my controller. I stood and stretched, muscles protesting. Go ahead, I said, but keep the thermal feed open on my console. Robin initiated the drone launch. A second later, 4 small UAV icons blinked into life on the 3D map overlay, each assigned to a specific branch of the Harper's Junction network. The primary drone hovered near the sealed grate, lighting up the junction in high-resolution sonar. 2 others edged down the flooded river shaft and the adjacent subway conduit. The 4th circled above the collapse site, scanning the embankment wall's soil composition. I watched as the 3D model formed in our visualization program. Hollow tunnels carved beneath the street, flooded chambers, twisting side passages, and, deep in the southern branch, 2 small heat signatures still moving faintly among the shadows. The coordinates match the 6th person's last known position, a narrow ledge under a collapsed pipe clinging to an air pocket. My heart jumped. There was movement. 2 signatures, not one. One static, one mobile. The static one was larger, the shape of a crouched adult. The mobile shape was small, child-sized, moving slowly back and forth, as though pacing. That must be the child figure we'd glimpsed, but where was the adult with them? The other 2 adults had emerged through the grate. Something deep in the southern passage remained alive. Robin, I said, voice tight, zoom in on those heat signatures. Can we get visual through the pipe cracks? Any shape detail? She keyed her scope. The thermal overlay refined itself on my main monitor. 2 glowing points, one at knee height, one at shoulder height, barely separated by a few feet. In the sonar feed beside it, the shapes glinted. One mass low to the ground, possibly curled up, and another upright but hunched, shifting slightly. I zoomed further. A faint outline of limbs, the curve of shoulders. My chest tightened. They're alive, I whispered. We have to get to them. Robin glanced at me, concern in her eyes. Dan, structurally, the secondary conduits are unstable. If we send another team in too soon, The whole junction could collapse and we'll lose them forever. The engineers need at least 6 hours for full shoring. I closed my eyes, torn between the ticking heartbeat of those lives trapped below and the cold, hard necessity of safety. In an emergency, sometimes you had to risk the system for the human, but a collapsed tunnel could kill every rescuer. I opened my eyes, resolution hardening. Draft an immediate plan for remote extraction. Deploy the aquatic drones with suction lines, small enough to navigate the rubble. Perhaps tethered lifelines we can feed through the pipe cracks. Anything that doesn't require human boots in the water until we shore it up. Robin exhaled. I'll coordinate with engineering, and I'll patch you through to the dive team chief. She tapped a couple of keys. They've got submersible ROVs with manipulator arms. They can wedge through pipe joints and feed the lifelines. I nodded, relief twisting with dread. Make it happen, and reroute all emergency power to the junction mapping console. I want full uptime on that feed. She set to work. I stared at the 3D model, the faint smile. No, just a trick of heat waves, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was down there knew we were watching, had orchestrated this entire rescue to lure us in, to reshape our understanding of the city's underbelly. They had used our own voices, my name, and our protocols against us. And yet now, watching those glowing forms, I realized they didn't just need our help, they needed us to bear witness. My phone buzzed, a text from SWAT command. All personnel at dispatch center, heavy debrief in conference room. Supervisor wants verbal report as soon as possible. I pocketed it and keyed the mic. Dispatch to command. Stand by 1 minute, please. We have live survivors and 2 more still trapped beyond structural hazard. I'll need 15 minutes. A terse acknowledgement came. I turned back to Robin. Send the report as soon as I'm ready. Then I'll get it to them. She gave a small nod. I closed my eyes, shoulder tense, and allowed myself a moment to honor those voices. Mark, Carla, Preston, Gina, Darius, Evelyn, Jason, and now these new survivors. I listened to their names faintly in my mind, each echoing through the static of my soul. When I opened my eyes, I tapped the headset mic. Dispatch to ROV team. Initiate deployment into southern conduit. Feed lifeline through cracked pipe at grid coordinates 417.22. Begin extraction first on the static heat signature, then loop to the mobile one. I repeat, static first. Over. A confident voice crackled back. ROV team copy. Deploying in 2 minutes. Lifeline loaded. We're on it. I exhaled and sank into my chair. The monitors hummed with activity. Sonar sweeps, thermal imaging, structural overlays, radio logs, and the slowly filling queue of storm-related calls now streaming back in. I keyed through the audio logs one more time, isolating the hum beneath the static, the resonance that Robin had pointed out. I overlaid the new imaging data onto it, searching for any correlation between where the hum was strongest and the survivors' locations. My screen blinked, warning tiles popping up. Structural risk, moderate. Thermal anomaly, confirmed. Doppler shift, present. I toggled off the non-critical feeds until only the 3D model and the thermal ROV feed remained. Then the Lifeline's green tracer line appeared, snaking from the entry hatch through the annex into the southern conduit, wavering slightly as it followed the ROV's path. I watched as the robot's camera entered the narrow passage, metal arms extended. The light reflected off the stale water below, illuminating swirling sediment. The ROV's manipulator found the first pipe crack, even narrower than expected, and forced a thin cable through, our lifeline to the survivors. My pulse raced. On thermal, the static figure shifted slightly, rising. The investigators on my team had warned me, never aim direct lights at hypothermic victims. They could panic or seize. I flicked the camera to infra only, watching as the rheostat dimmed. The figure, an older man I thought, cocked his head, then reached out, retrieving the cable with trembling fingers. He tied it around his waist, then gently tugged. On ROV feed, the cable slipped back, pulling taut. "Line secured," came the voice from the dive team. "Begin extraction once splice anchor is set." The other end of the lifeline was already attached to the rescue harness on our side of the grate. As the first survivor's body shape pulled free, I felt a tremor in my chest. Relief, dread, wonder, sorrow. We had risked everything to bring them back. Behind them, in the darkness, I could almost see the second figure. Smaller, childlike, waiting for their turn. I keyed the mic again. "Proceed with caution. Methinks the second will need slow retrieval. Keep thermal feed on. Report any sudden drops in heat signature. Over." In the calm silence, I heard them say, "Copy," and the lifeline hummed through the submerged section as the first survivor was drawn slowly up the grate toward safety. My eyes flicked between screens, waiting for the child figure to emerge. Then, a small, hunched form, hair floating like tendrils in the water, half hidden behind a fallen beam, reaching out for the cable. My chest tightened. I whispered to the console, "Come on." And the lifeline extended again. The second figure slowly tugged free, water rippling, eyes glinting with a mixture of fear and hope, until at last they emerged into the girded light of the grate. They were alive. But something in their posture made my blood run cold, an instinct or a memory. As they were hauled up, their face came into view for an instant. Pale, two great pupils, reflecting every light source, a grin that was almost human, but tipped into something uncanny. I leaned forward, lens zooming in. Their lips moved, barely audible through the static in my headset. "Thank you, Dana. Now we belong to you." My breath caught. The lifeline tugged, pulling them behind the grate, and it clanged shut once more. I sank back, trembling, as the ROV cameras retracted. The sonar drones swept the collapsed shafts, and engineering teams prepared for full stabilization. On my console, the survivors' vital signs blinked. Stable, warming, breathing. And yet, beneath the surface of relief, a deeper terror took root. They had not only survived, but they had crossed the threshold from the tunnels into our world. And now, with every name they whispered, every breath they gasped, they would shape the city's future. I pressed the microphone one last time, voice low and resolute. "Dispatch to all units. Mission status updated. Successful extraction of survivors from Harper's Junction. No further immediate threats detected. Maintain monitoring of tunnel frequencies for phantom harmonics. Full structural shoring scheduled for 0600 tomorrow." End of ops. I replaced the headset and closed my eyes briefly, listening to the hum of the consoles, the drip of water from the grate behind me, and the faint echo of a whisper that no one else would ever hear. "We belong to you now, Dana." And in the soft glow of the monitors, I knew that next time the storm hit, and the static light blinked, and the scanner hissed through the rain, I would answer. Because they had come inside the city's bones, inside the tunnels, inside my own voice, and there was no shutting the gates against a force that had learned to speak through the darkness. I still hear the static before I hear her voice, just a hiss, and then the muffled edge of panic. It was 2:17 a.m. on July 14th, 2019, and I'd already been at this console for nearly 10 hours. My headset felt like a vice squeezing my temples, and the glow of the monitors had turned the dispatch center into an aquarium of pale light. Outside the window, rain tapped out a random Morse code on the glass. I leaned forward, pressing the mic button and clearing my throat. "Unit 14, you copy?" I said, voice low, trying to smooth out the weariness I felt pooling in my chest. My own reflection stared back at me in the window pane. Dark circles under tired eyes, slack jaw, the hint of regret in the set of my mouth. Static. Then, "Dispatch, this is 14. I'm at 35th and Delaware." No sign of the vehicle, but The line crackled, filled with the intrusion of another frequency. A faint voice overlapped. "Please, somebody help me. They're coming back." I froze. 2 transmissions on the same channel. I toggled the patch button. "Go ahead, caller." Silence, as if the line had obeyed, and then nothing. Then a sob so raw it made my stomach tighten. I tapped the button again. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. What's your location?" Another burst of static, then the caller's voice, gravelly and distant. I'm on Terrace Drive, near the gas station." I glanced at the map on my screen. Terrace Drive, a narrow street that dead-ended at an old convenience mart. Boarded windows. A flickering neon sign someone must have forgotten to turn off. "Can you see any landmarks? A cross street?" There was a shudder in her breath. "There's a payphone booth, right under the streetlight." The booth had been out of service for years. I remembered because I used to ride my bike by that route when I was on road patrol. Never saw anyone use it. "All right, Unit 14, disregard last. I've got a caller on Terrace. Possible kidnapping in progress." "Copy that. Dispatch," the officer replied, sounding strained. "I'm en route." I held the line open, listening to the hiss. The caller spoke again, voice cracking. They took her. They ran off into the alley. Please, hurry." I called for backup over the internal channel and checked the closest units. 8 officers within a 5-mile radius. 2 were on breaks. 1 was refueling. Another handling paperwork. Only 14 and 22 were available. "Unit 22, can you assist 14 on Terrace Drive? Possible abduction." 10-4, came the clipped reply. I keyed the mic to the caller's line. "Ma'am, officers are on the way. Stay where you are. Keep your back to a wall if you can." Another crackle, then a soft thump, like someone slapping leather. "Don't move," I whispered, though she couldn't see. "Just breathe." Then a third voice, male, calm but chilling. "You shouldn't have called." My heart jumped. It wasn't on the recording, but I still hear it, that polished menace, the echo of a professional. "You hear me, kid?" the man said. "You're about to learn why no one here listens." My hand hovered over the radio. 14, 22, be advised there may be a suspect on scene. In the booth, the caller stammered. He's stepping closer. I think he has a gun." I kept talking, voice softening. "Ma'am, can you get a description?" Footsteps, metal scraping. She whispered, "Tall. Black coat, I can't," then nothing but static. I tapped the button again, but the line was dead. I watched the clock. 2:20 a.m. 4 minutes since the first report. Calls still hadn't come through from the officers. Panic rose, but I forced it down. I hit the radio. 14, status? Silence. 14, do you copy? A burst of heavy breathing, and then Officer 14's voice. Dispatch, I've got eyes on a figure in the alley. Are you with the victim? I asked, urgency creeping in. Negative, he replied. Shit. Static swallowed his next words. I glanced around the room. 3 other dispatchers busied themselves with routine. None had noticed. If I didn't push, that call might slip away, lost in the blur of 30 megahertz and low-priority traffic. I patched the victim's channel to the priority feed and jacked up the volume. Scrubbed the noise. Behind the hiss, I thought I heard a distant scream. Faint, drowned by thunder. "Unit 22, where are you?" I barked. A new voice answered. Female this time, breathless. "On Ewing at the diner. I'm heading south." I released the victim's line and redirected 22 to Terrace. 22, floor it. 14 is at the alley entrance. The dial tone rang in my ear, then a final transmission from 14. "Dispatch, I'm in the alley." "I see something." He hesitated. Then, "It's not." The channel went dead. No more beeps, no more channel lights, just silence. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The map blinked, showing 14's last ping, 75 feet inside the alley, then nothing. His radio gone silent. I switched to the emergency override. 14, emergency button? No response. Adrenaline washed through me. I hit the phone to call the county supervisor. My fingers shook. "Supervisor, get me every available unit on Terrace Drive. Now, this is a code 3. As I waited for confirmation, I pulled up the audio log of past calls from that area. Abandoned building alarms, homeless campers, a 2017 report of strange lights. Nothing about abduction. But this felt different. I could still hear the panic in her voice, and I could feel the weight of those last words. It's not. What wasn't what? I cross-checked the GPS. 14's last location stalled halfway down the alley, halfway between the streetlight and the dumpster. I zoomed the satellite feed. The alley was narrow, walls of brick on either side, the ground slick with rainwater. "Tie up the grid," I said into the mic. "No foot traffic, no codes other than this in the next 10 minutes. I want a searchlight on that alley." Overhead, our fluorescent lights buzzed, and the rain outside picked up speed. I took a breath, closed my eyes for a moment, and tried to steady my voice. "Supervisor, we've got a missing officer in a potential ambush. Tone out." I opened my eyes. The room felt too quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. I pressed my ear against the headset, listened for any crackle or murmur. Then a low thump echoed through the alley mic, a sound like metal scraping against brick. I leaned in, heart hammering. Scrape. Scrape. Silence. I hit play on the recording buffer. Rewound 3 seconds. Hit play. There, beneath the static, was a soft voice. No, 2 voices layered together. Officer 14's calm tone, and something else. A whisper. So faint I almost missed it. "Find me." The recorder clicked off. I sat back, blood cold in my veins. I remember the precise moment I realized the call might never end cleanly. That even if we found him, the story wouldn't make sense. I keyed the mic one last time. "All units, I need eyes in that alley now. And get me whoever's watching the payphone booth. Something tells me it's still alive." Then I waited, listening to the rain, to the hum of computers, to the distant echo of a voice that had vanished, leaving only questions and a dispatcher's regret. I hunched over the console, eyes glued to the map, as raindrops raced down the window like tiny desperate callers fleeing into the night. My chest felt tight, as though the weight of every unanswered plea in dispatch history pressed against my ribs. It was 2:24 a.m. now, 7 minutes since Officer 14's radio fell silent. 9 minutes since those 2 words. "Find me." I keyed the mic again, steadying my voice. "All units, grid search on Terrace Drive Alley. Bring thermal cams, searchlights, whatever you've got. Approach with caution." Rain pattered harder. The hum of computers and the distant squeal of air vents filled the room, but to me they sounded like a chorus of ghosts. Voices I couldn't silence. I toggled over to the audio buffer and scrubbed back through the frequencies, hunting that same whisper. It played, soft, urgent, barely there. Find me. And before it, almost imperceptible, another scream. Not the high-pitched panic of a victim, but something deeper, guttural, like someone thrashing behind a locked door. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I hit the recording for backup. Dispatch to supervisor. Badge 1407 is down. Proceed code 3, weapons drawn, perimeter only. I watched the units light up on the map. Tail lights weaving through intersection icons, converging toward that narrow corridor between two brick buildings. The alley, only 15 feet wide, felt impossibly small now. A funnel drawing in everyone's dread. The phone on my desk rang. Supervisor reporting in. His voice was tight. I've got 6 on the way, 3 with thermal, ETA 2 minutes. Any visual on the suspect? I hesitated. No visual. Last ping from 14's radio was 50 feet down the alley, but I'm hearing noises on the mic, like there's someone in the shadows. Static crackled. Behind it, a voice. Don't leave me. I nearly dropped the handset. That wasn't 14's tone. It was softer, female, trembling with desperation. Who was that? I muttered, then spoke into the mic. Supervisor, did you hear that? Negative. I'll stay patched. I switched back to the alley channel. The hiss flattened into silence. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone, or something, walking from the far end of the alley toward the entrance. My stomach knotted as I realized those steps weren't lined up with the officer's approach. They were coming from the direction where no one should be. 14, if you can hear me, identify yourself, I said. No answer. My gaze drifted to the logs from that same location in past years, of abandoned calls, of midnight alarms with no origin. It all felt connected, like a subtext in the city's dark novel that only dispatchers and night shift officers ever glimpsed between pages. A fresh alert popped up. Unit 22 was on scene, reporting at the alley mouth. 22, status? I asked. Her voice crackled through, tense. Dispatch, I see him. Officer 14, he's on the ground, face down, there's blood, I'm moving in. My hands trembled. Blood? It was too soon. She should have initialed secure. We never exposed officers to that without backup. 22, hold at your position, wait for the rest. Do you see the suspect? Static. Then a low, garbled transmission, and finally, Her words cut out. My breath caught. I looked again at the tiny blue dot marking 22's last location, right at the alley entrance. Another dot, a blinking red triangle, in the center of the alley, 50 feet away. Thermal cam feed, unverified. Something warm. Not necessarily human, but too steady a heat signature to be a stray animal. Supervisor, I said, voice breaking. I've got a possible casualty and an unidentified heat source down the alley. We need medevac and canine units. He barked back orders into his handset. Through the glass, I saw the storm barreling in, wind rocking the dispatch center's metal frame, and felt a shiver of dread. Outside, beyond the safety of these walls, someone was bleeding. Someone was watching, and someone, or something, was moving in a space too small to hide. I tapped the recorded log for the payphone booth. That booth, long since disconnected, had just rang at 2:22 a.m., exactly 2 minutes after the initial distress call. A phantom call. I played it back, silence for 5 seconds, then the faint click of a receiver being lifted, followed by that same whisper, "Find me." My pulse spiked. Someone on the inside was calling out from that booth, or someone was impersonating a ghost through dead lines. I had never heard of a payphone ringing on its own. I pressed the intercom. Security, lock the doors, clear the lobby, check all entry points. If anyone approaches, instruct them to identify themselves. Then, back to the mic. All units, update. No response. I scrubbed back through the frequency again, searching for any hint of conversation, any code word, any sign that 14 or 22 were alive. The only thing I heard was the static and those two words over and over in my memory. Find me. In the silence, I felt my own doubts crash in. Was I chasing a phantom? Did I order units into a trap? Questions swirled. Why target that dead-end alley? Why use an out-of-service payphone? And most haunting, who kept the victim on the line until the last second, then dropped her like a stone? My throat was tight, as if the words I needed to say were stuck behind bone. I keyed the override again. All dispatch logs. Block transmissions except for this emergency. No department comms on any other channels until the incident is contained. Outside, thunder rattled the windows. Behind me, dispatchers still worked their screens, oblivious. I wanted to shout, to yank them from their routines and into this nightmare, but I knew they wouldn't understand until those units came back, or didn't. I took a slow breath and forced myself to clear the backlog of routine alerts. A fire alarm in Sector 4. A traffic light malfunction at 6th and Main. None mattered now. In moments, the evening would arrive. Breakfast crews, shift changes. They'd breeze in, coffee cups in hand, clueless about why those first responders never returned. My hand hovered over the mic, knowing that any word I sent now would change everything. I thought of Officer 14, the kid from Brooklyn who joined the force 2 years ago, full of promise, and of that voice in the booth pleading to be found. Two voices, separated by space and circumstance, now tied together in a puzzle of static and blood. The overhead lights dimmed briefly, flickered. For a breath, the dispatch center was plunged into semi-darkness. When they came back on, I saw it in the corner of my eye. A movement on the security feed. Someone stepping away from the payphone booth. Their silhouette cast long and twisted against the rain-slick pavement. I clicked the intercom. Security, identify that person now. Do not engage, then back to my headset. All units, a suspect may have changed position. Thermal feed relocating. East wall of alley, heat signature moving north. Silence followed, thick, expectant. The storm outside raged, and in that moment I felt the weight of every unanswered call I'd ever taken. The static crackled, faint but insistent, whispering still. Find me. And then the line went dead. Rain pounded against the glass so hard it sounded as if the sky itself were trying to speak through the storm. I sat frozen for a moment, fingertips still resting on the mic button as the world outside went silent, save for that last echo of "Find me." My vision blurred at the edges. Tiredness, adrenaline, and dread combining into a kind of tunnel that narrowed around me. Then I shook my head and forced myself back to the task. The thermal feed blinked back to life on the screen, a shifting crimson silhouette gliding along the rough brick wall of the alley. It moved slowly, almost deliberately, its shape too tall and narrow for an average human frame. But maybe that was just me overthinking. I tapped the screen, enlarging the feed, but it stayed grainy, pixelated, just a smear of heat across the air. I keyed the override mic again, voice taut. All units, update thermal feed. If you lose sight, switch to maglite low beams only. No floodlights. We don't want to scatter the suspect into the back streets. Silence. The seconds stretched like molasses. Then, through the crackle, "Dispatch, this is K9 Unit 7. We're at the alley entrance. We have Nitro on the leash. He's alerting to something near the dumpster." I drew in a sharp breath. Nitro was a German shepherd, solid, reliable, trained to detect hidden threats. If he was uneasy, there was good reason. Copy that, Unit 7. Maintain position. Don't release until I confirm. I flicked over to the security monitor feed. The payphone booth camera, its neon surround glowing ghostly in the rain, showed no one there now. Empty. But on the ground the rainwater glistened unnaturally, reflecting the glow of the street lamp in fractured patterns. Then I noticed something. Footprints. Fresh footprints leading away from the booth, straight into the alley. Footprints that ended halfway down as if the person lifted their feet and crept on tiptoe. My pulse spiked. I tapped the intercom. Security, zoom on the lobby feed. Did anyone enter the building in the last 5 minutes? A crackly response. Negative. Nothing. Since 2:15, I cursed under my breath. That meant whoever rang the booth came from somewhere else. I toggled back to the map overlay and cross-checked building plans. There was a narrow service corridor behind the deli next door, access only by a locked delivery door. The cameras there were offline for maintenance. I glanced at the list of logged maintenance requests. Someone had reported a flickering light in that corridor 3 hours ago. Status: deferred. Supervisor, I said softly, I need security to dispatch someone to the delivery entrance of the deli. Next to the booth, check for forced entry. He grunted agreement. Meanwhile, the thermal feed dot in the alley paused, then drifted toward the back exit of the alley, the narrow gap under a chain-link fence that led into an abandoned lot. I keyed the mic. All units, suspect moving toward the lot behind the alley, block exits, do not let them slip away. Unit 22's voice came back, quiet but steady. Dispatch, I'm at the far end of the alley. I see 14's patrol vest lying in a puddle next to the dumpster. Blood trail heading toward the fence. My stomach plummeted. 22, is the area secure? She hesitated. I'm alone. No backup yet. The rain's, it's so loud I can hardly hear. I swallowed hard. Stay on the line. Nitro, can you track with the dog? Unit 7 responded. Dispatch, Nitro's on point. He's focused near the dumpster, but he's backing away. He won't cross the puddle. A dog, refusing to cross a small pool of water, was strange. They're trained to ignore environmental factors. Nitro's behavior meant he smelled something, perhaps a body, but something else stopped him. Fear? Instinct? The thunder cracked so loud my chair vibrated. My headset nearly fell from my ear. I clamped my fingers around it. Then the screen flickered. The alley camera feed went dark. Power failure. At the same moment, the thermal feed stuttered, then froze. The only thing left was the rain and the dim emergency lights on the walls. My breath hitched. All units, cameras down. Repeat, cameras down. Units, switch to manual comms. Stay on channel 3 Alpha, no other traffic. The comms channel crackled. Copy, I'm moving on foot. 14's down that corridor. I realized with a jolt that it wasn't Unit 22 speaking. The voice was softer, hoarser, and unmistakably that of the female caller. Dispatch, he's in the corridor. Come, please. My fingers slammed down on the desk. Who is this? Identify yourself. Silence, then a raspy whisper. They're going to come back. Find me. I yanked off my headset and slammed it on the desk. Supervisor. The victim's line? Someone's using it. It's a playback loop or a trap. We've got an impersonator. I need to cut that line and connect a trace. His voice sounded far away. Working on... I slammed a fist to the console. This was wrong. Our protocols told us to confirm live voice, but this was clearly canned, looped, designed to lure us deeper. My senses flared. We were walking into an ambush. Then another alert. The intercom, security reporting back in. Dispatch. Delivery entrance door is ajar. Damaged lock. No sign of forced pry, like someone picked it clean. Inside, crates toppled, and saw footprints in the dust. Too small for an adult, round-faced shoe prints. My throat clenched. Child-sized footprints. That meant someone smaller, maybe a teenager. Teenage kidnappers? That didn't fit. "Supervisor," I said, voice trembling, "I want a uniformed officer to the deli now." Units at the alley, fall back to secure positions. This is a dynamic situation, maybe bait. Static hissed. Then so faint I almost missed it. Laughter. Quiet, breathy, coming through the mic channel. Like someone standing right behind me, whispering. I spun around. Nothing. The other dispatchers were still at their pods, working normal calls. A burglary alarm, a noise complaint. Completely oblivious. I pressed the panic button under my desk, activating the silent alarm. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst from my chest. "All units, stand by for lockdown," I barked. "Lock your doors, arm yourselves. Suspects mobile, possibly inside the deli service corridor or the abandoned lot." The storm roared overhead. I felt like we were standing on the edge of something vast, unseen, a trap waiting to snap shut. Suddenly, the monitors flickered back on. The alley camera blinked. A pale, soaked figure crouching beside the dumpster. Officer 14's uniform, torn and caked in mud, but the face under the brim looked wrong. Too small, too smooth. The figure raised its head, and our jaws collectively dropped when security whispered over the intercom. "I see it." On screen, that pale shape tilted its head, the eyes reflecting the red emergency lights like dark marbles. Then it cocked its head toward the camera, as if studying us. My breath caught. I didn't need an instruction manual to know that whatever sat there wasn't human. Not by any stretch of natural law. I fumbled for the mic, but my voice failed me. The figure on the monitor pressed a hand to the lens. Slender fingers splayed, dripping rainwater, and whispered, distorted through the malfunctioning audio, "Find me." And as the emergency lights pulsed, the image flickered, and the figure vanished, leaving nothing but that final echo, and the realization that we weren't chasing a person at all, but something beyond our understanding. The overhead lights popped back on in a harsh buzz, and for a heartbeat the entire dispatch center felt exposed. Every monitor glare hot against my skin, every console hum throbbing like a warning. I stared at the blank patch where the alley camera feed had been, then circled back to the thermal overlay. The red dot was gone. My headset crackled to life with distant voices finally coordinating. Backup units had arrived at the deli's delivery entrance. K9 Unit 7 was setting nitro loose down the service corridor. Transport vans were sealing off the abandoned lot behind the alley. But through it all, I heard that voice again. Low, urgent, echoing in my skull. "Find me." I tapped the mic. "All units, hold positions and identify anything out of place. Footprints, clothing, dropped equipment, anything that might clue us in." The room around me spun with activity. Dispatchers barking reroutes, phones ringing. The supervisor pacing behind me like a coiled spring. Yet I felt pinned by a single thought. The thing on the monitor wasn't human. And if we were dealing with something beyond standard protocols, something that could slip through cameras, mimic voices, even manipulate electronics, every procedure we had meant nothing. I slid the headphones off and paced behind my chair, glancing at the rain-streaked window. In that distorted reflection I saw a gaunt face, hollow eyes, pale skin, shadows carved into the cheeks. My own face, twisted by exhaustion and fear. I realized that this night had already taken something from me. My certainty. The intercom buzzed. Security had eyes on the abandoned lot's rear fence. They reported a faint heat signature just beyond the chain link, near an overturned shopping cart. A solitary form crouched there, blending into the dark. They were too far to identify clearly, but the silhouette was unmistakable. A figure much too slight to match Officer 14's build, but distinctly human in shape. "Supervisor," I gasped, jabbing a finger at the monitor, "that's our heat source. I want a perimeter team with NVGs to approach. Slowly, quietly, let Nitro pick up the scent if possible." Before he could respond, my headset picked up the tiniest whisper, so faint I thought it was static. "Help me." It wasn't the looped "find me." It was new, desperate, real, and it came from behind me. I spun, heart stuttering, but no one stood there. Only the low hum of fluorescent bulbs and the far-off roar of thunder. Then the monitor flickered, and the figure in the lot jerked upright, turning toward the camera. For a moment, the low-light feed showed a face half hidden by matted hair. A young woman's face, streaked with rain and mud, eyes wide with terror. She raised her hand in a pleading gesture. "Help me," she mouthed. "No," she spoke, crackling through the feed. "Please, I'm right here." And before I could order the team forward, the connection went dead. The screen went black. "Damn it," I breathed, slamming my hand on the console. She was there, alive. Silence filled the room again, thicker than before. The rain outside eased to a whisper, as though the storm had paused to listen. I pressed my palm against the cold metal desk and leaned in close, dropping my voice to a hoarse whisper. "She's still out there," I told the empty room, "and we're running out of time." I pressed my palm to the desk, willing my heart to slow even as the storm within me raged. The monitor feed had flickered off, yet I could still feel her presence beyond those walls, a stranded soul trapped between signals and shadow. I keyed the mic, voice steeled against the tremor I felt. "All units listen up," I said, cutting through the chatter. "Team Bravo and Unit 22, you're cleared to advance on the perimeter. Approach the lot from the north side. Maintain visual contact, use NVGs only, no white lights, confirm when you've got eyes on the suspect." The feeds sputtered back to life, showing the narrow gap under the fence where the young woman had kneeled moments ago. Now the ground was empty, as if she had simply faded into the night air. But in the corner of the feed, a low shape shifted, too low to be human and too deliberate to be a trick of camera distortion. My throat went dry. I heard the faint detonation of a radio ping, then "Bravo copying. Moving to grid 50, ETA 60 seconds. I exhaled, trying to calm the coil in my chest. "Unit 7, help me out. Any chance Nitro can navigate the lot perimeter?" "Negative, dispatch," came the reply. "He's balking at the fence line. Something's spooking him. Won't cross the gap." That dog was 15 years old in K9 time, built of muscle and training. If he refused, then something unnatural lay beyond. I glanced at the clock. 2:37 a.m. 20 minutes since the first call. A half hour until dawn, too long, and no one would want to admit we'd failed an officer and a civilian on my watch. I looked around the center. Dispatchers tapped away at trivial alerts, unaware or unwilling to believe the gravity of what we faced. I thought of 14's mother, waiting at home, of the young woman crying out for help, of every voice I'd ever connected and disconnected with a keystroke. I keyed the override and spoke directly into the open floor mic. "All channels lock. This is priority 1. No transmissions except for this incident. Acknowledge." The room fell silent, then punctuated by static confirmations from each unit. I watched the map as the dots moved, Bravo's blue icons creeping along the fence line, Unit 22's red pushing toward the dumpster's far side. Then the thermal feed glowed again, briefly, as a cluster of small heat signatures hopped past the alley's exit, dashing toward a maintenance shed at the lot's edge. Too small for a grown man, too hurried for an animal. "Supervisor," I said, voice hoarse, "we've got multiple heat contacts, juvenile, size, moving south toward that locked shed. Can you get us entry keys or breach teams?" He barked back, and within seconds I saw a new icon appear. Unit Metro SWAT, Code 3 converging on the shed. But time seemed to warp. The monitors stuttered, the raid logs froze, and the consoles flickered. For a moment, the whole center felt like it was dipping into another dimension, as if the air between the walls had condensed into static gravity. Then, from the line I'd thought disconnected, that voice rasped, "Don't trust them." My stomach dropped. The tone was neither 14's nor the girl's, but something else. A rasp, as if formed from the hiss of white noise itself. "Who are you? Identify!" I yelled, slapping the desk. Silence. Then, so faint it might have been a dream. "They're not what they seem." I replayed the snippet at half speed, behind the crackle, something like breathing. Deep, slow, and measured. Utterly unlike the panicked gasps from before. I slammed keys to isolate that line, but the system balked. The audio buffer glitched, looping the whisper 2 more times before cutting off. My headset scolded me with feedback, and the supervisor stepped in, voice clipped, panels flaring. "Something's frying the circuits. We'll lose comms in 30 seconds unless we switch to backup generators." I toggled the power override, prayer more than procedure, then watched as backup lights hummed on. The tension in the room ratcheted up, everyone suddenly aware that normal safeguards had failed. Just then, Bravo unit clicked in. "Dispatch, we're at the shed." Looks locked from inside, door jammed, hearing, voices. Sounds like singing, soft, lullaby-like. Lullabies in a decrepit maintenance shed, in the heart of a rain-drenched alley. My jaw clenched. "Bravo, repeat that?" "Yeah." Faint female voices, echoing, sorrowful. A lullaby through the static. The same whimpered plea. "Help me." I drew the curtain on every noise complaint, treefall alert, and glitching traffic cam. Nothing else mattered. "SWAT, breach the door," I ordered, "but stand by for civilian casualties." Medics on alert. On screen, I watched as a black-clad figure slid a slim battering ram into the jammed lock. With a sharp crack, the door gave way. A burst of thermal light as flashbangs went off. Then, a flurry of movement. 2 officers sprinted through the entry, rifles raised. The camera feed from their helmet cams sputtered on, showing a narrow corridor, littered with old oil drums and discarded crates. The air shimmered with mist. The corridor ended in a low arch. Beyond it, a larger room illuminated by a solitary floodlight someone had managed to rig up. Everything else was darkness. And in that darkness, I saw her. The young woman, eyes wide, clothes torn, but not alone. Behind her stood Officer 14, pale as death, eyes blank yet shining with an inner light. His uniform was slick with mud, his radio hanging loose. He raised a hand in greeting, slow and deliberate, as if on cue. Then he spoke, voice distant, mechanical. "They told me to stay, to help them, find me." The floodlight flickered, throwing his face into alternating relief and shadow. The woman lunged forward, reaching for him, sobbing, "Carter! Carter, please." But 14's head tilted, and the silhouette behind them, indistinct, shifting, stretched tall against the far wall. It moved with a jerking, inhuman gait. The camera feed warped, the image dissolving into pure static. The helmet cam went dark. I stared at the blank screen, chest heaving. Every protocol, every training, every gut instinct screamed that we'd only scratched the surface of something impossible. My fingers hovered over the mic, mind racing with questions. Who, or what, stood behind them in that alley? How had it corrupted Carter, and why did it lure her there? Was it the same force that rang the payphone, whispered through dead lines, and eluded every camera and canine nose? And most of all, had we come to rescue, or had we simply walked into its trap? Outside, the rain subsided to a hush. Inside, the dispatch center felt too small, like a cage. I gathered myself for the final act, the call that would send every remaining unit in or pull them back into safety. I pressed the intercom, voice heavy. All units, stand down, regroup at staging. We're pulling back to reassess. 10 sets of footsteps, boots sloshing through rain runoff, signaled reluctant compliance. I exhaled, adrenaline ebbing, leaving a hollow ache. The silence that followed was absolving and terrifying. Then, from my own speakers, a single crystalline ring. The payphone line. It rang once, crisp, urgent, and I stared at the console, heart in my throat. My hand trembled as I cradled the receiver against my ear. The dispatch center's fluorescent hum receded into the background, replaced by the solitary pulse of that ring, like a lighthouse beacon cutting through an endless dark. For long seconds, I heard only the hiss of a crossed line. Then, unmistakably, the soft rasp of a voice I'd come to dread and yearn for in equal measure. "Find me," it whispered, low and urgent, so close I could feel the words vibrating through the handset. I'm out here." I dropped into my chair, mind racing, heart hammering. This was no canned loop. This was live. Somewhere beyond our barricade of units and floodlights, she was still alive, still listening for my voice. I stumbled over to the console, slamming my palm into the emergency patch button. "Patch that line to all units on grid Charlie Delta," I ordered, voice cracking. "I want them to hear her, so they know she's real, and relay her exact location if she can describe it." Static crackled, followed by the faint gasp of the girl. "They moved me. They took me somewhere. It's cold. I can't see." My stomach dropped. Cold. She was underground? In a basement? A storm drain? I keyed my mic. "Ma'am, are you able to tell me if you're in a room, a corridor, or—" The line crackled so badly I almost lost her voice. Then, "I'm in a hallway. The floor is tiled, white, lights flicker above." I swallowed hard, picturing a clinical corridor, a hospital basement, a morgue. Any room with white tiles would amplify static and echoes, perfect for hunting. "Check for doors on your left or right. Any numbers? Words on the walls?" I pressed, heart thundering. "Doors. 2 doors. One says storage. The other, maintenance." The storage room door opened just a crack. "There's a smell, rust and bleach. Please hurry." The red indicator light on the monitor blinked. Unit Metro SWAT breaching. Their helmet cam feed came into view. A low-ceilinged hallway, walls scuffed and damp. 2 painted doors exactly as she described. A yellow storage stencil on one, maintenance on the other. Rainwater trickled along the groove between tiles. My voice was calm, belying the tremor in my hands. "SWAT team, confirm your feed. Is this where she is?" "Affirmative, dispatch," came the clipped reply. "We're moving down the hallway, flashbangs at the end. Stand by." I keyed the intercom so other dispatchers could hear. "All non-essential channels, hold." I'm patching the girl's line to the SWAT team so they can talk her through if needed. A chorus of murmurs filled the room as my colleagues realized we had a living victim's field report, an impossibility only moments ago. The tension, already taut, snapped into focus. The SWAT feed stuttered. Footfalls echoing hollowly. Then a blinding flash of white as grenades went off, momentarily obliterating the visual, followed by the heavy clack of boots racing forward. I winced at every mutated sound, as though my own eardrums were on the front line. "Ma'am?" I said into the mic. "Can you hear them?" There was a pause, and then a whisper. "Yes, they lit it up. I see. A man. He's holding me, please." "Which door? Storage or maintenance?" I cut in, urgency slicing through every syllable. "Storage," she breathed. "It's the storage." "SWAT, breach the storage door," I relayed. 3, 2, 1, go. A crack of wood splintering, then a rush of movement. The feed jerked violently as an officer thrust the camera inside the room. My stomach clenched at the sight. The storage room was narrow, the single overhead bulb swinging wildly. Shelves crammed with dusty boxes and cleaning equipment formed lanes, turning the small space into a maze. The floor tiles were slick, reflecting the beam of the helmet light in fractured shards. Up ahead, I saw him, the abductor. His silhouette was broad-shouldered, head bent over the girl, who crouched against the far wall. I could see her hands pressed to her mouth, stifling a sob. The man wore a dark coat, its collar raised as if shielding him from the rain that still dripped through a crack in the entrance. My breath caught. I'd heard that voice before, calm, almost rehearsed. "Find me." It belonged to the caller, but this man's stance, the way he leaned in close, suggested a captive snarled in his grip. "Police, drop whatever you're holding." An officer barked, voice muffled through the comm. The flurry of boot steps echoed. The kidnapper turned, and for a fraction of a second I saw his face, eyes milky white, pupils unmoving, like a corpse's gaze. No fear, no surprise, only cold calculation. I gasped, leaning so close to the screen I could see the sweat glistening on his forehead. He released the girl as if she were an annoyance, stepping back deliberately, arms outstretched. The officers raised their weapons. Then, in the guttering light, the kidnapper's mouth twisted into a grin. Too wide, too precise, like someone practicing a motion by rote. My headset crackled. The girl's voice, panicked and distant. "Don't. Come closer. It's him. He isn't." Her scream cut off, replaced by a strangled gurgle. I clamped a hand over my mouth, stifling a cry. "Officer down," came the transmission. "Down in the storage room." My heart lurched. The SWAT team's comms flooded the channel. Chaos, commands, the clatter of equipment, an officer calling for medics. But beneath it, I still heard the kidnapper's laugh, low and hollow, echoing through the narrow space like a bell tolling doom. I stroked the tip of the mic, voice barely more than a breath. "Ma'am, can you answer me?" I switched back to the main log. Units reported weapons fired, 2 rounds, but no confirmation on the suspect. Then the assistant supervisor tapped me on the shoulder, jaw clenched. "We've got movement at the front door. Multiple heat signatures, adult females, juvenile males. They're coming in on foot." My head whipped around. The intercom crackled. "Security breach. Possible accomplices entering building." I pivoted back to the SWAT feed. The storage room camera was dead, black. A cold dread pooled in my gut. "Lock down immediately," I hissed. "No one moves in the center. I want every door secured. Channel 3, Alpha only for emergency traffic." My eyes flicked back to the feed of the building's entrance hallway. 3 shapes emerged from the shadows, stepping through the doorway. two small silhouettes flanking a taller figure whose face I still couldn't make out. Their heads turned in unison, as if listening for a command only they could hear. Then, with deliberate slowness, they began to walk toward the dispatch pods. My fingers hovered over the panic button. There was no more time. The final breach was at hand. I took a shaky breath, steeling myself, preparing to guide what remained of my team through the nightmare they had unleashed. And as I reached for the mic to call the final alert, the lights in the center winked out, drowned in darkness, save for the pale, flickering glow of the monitors that still played back the last moments of what we had lost. Silence, then a single, fragile voice in my earpiece. "Find me."